Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we're talking the 1984 Best Actress race at the Academy Awards, where Sally Field won for her performance in Places in the Heart. But why did she beat fellow nominees Judy Davis, Jessica Lange, Vanessa Redgrave, and Sissy Spacek? We'll explore all this and more today on And the Runner-Up Is. Hello, and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobson, here to talk about the 57th year of Best Actress at the Oscars, which covered the films of 1984. We'll be discussing how Sally Field won, why the losers lost, and who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. And my guest today is one of my recurring panelists of my bonus series, How Did They Win?, of which there are now double-digit episodes, so you can really go through the archive there. And now here she is appearing on her very first Best Actress episode. Writer and podcaster for InSession Film. Welcome to the show, Amy Thomasson.
Thank you. I'm ecstatic to be on the main show. I'm honored. You've had such amazing guests. I'm also, as Kevin knows, the biggest fan of the show. I listen to the podcasts and then I message him 1,000 messages on how the thoughts went. I resubmit them and I just love them. So great job, everybody, so far.
Yeah. You know, people have delivered.
1969 was one of the best ones you did. I will say that.
Yes.
That was a great episode.
Louis Vertel is an excellent podcast guest, I must say.
Excellent. So. And I agree, we need to do a screening of The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie where we can be all loud and rowdy and laugh every time she talks about Miss Lockhart and her gaseous domain. That line kills me.
Yeah. Great movie. So many quotable lines. Not as many in this particular year that we're going to talk about, but we'll get to it.
Sadly, no.
Yes. But before we talk 1984, let's talk Best Actress as a category. So my first question for you, Amy, I think I might know the answer to one of them. You've told me that you're probably going to give me multiple. I definitely know from our discussion in the past of one person you're going to pinpoint. But what is your favorite Best Actress win of all time?
There's now 4. So the first 3 are indelible to my soul. And it was like my own personal Sophie's choice because I've been preparing for this moment since you started the run of the show.
Wow.
And not because I'm on a payroll. Vivian Leigh in Gone with the Wind. Clearly.
That is who I was thinking of. Yeah.
Everything a Best Actor should be. Memorable, amazing character. She's probably my favorite heroine in film history. And literature. Scarlett O'Hara is a role that is meant to be rewarded. Vivian Leigh played her perfectly. And no person who's listening, it's not because I'm getting a check. Number 2, we have Olivia de Havilland in The Heiress.
Nice. Shattering
performance. Her growth in that character from the beginning of the movie to kind of a badass at the end of the movie without being so dramatic that it doesn't make sense. Right. Just kills me. That line, I can be very cruel. I've been taught by masters. First mic drop. She could have just dropped the mic and swept off the thing. Absolutely staggering. Liza Minnelli, 1972.
Of course.
Cabaret. That was Sally Bowles was everything I aspired to be in high school, and it was all because of Liza. If you took out the singing, if you took out the dancing, she still would have won for the dramatics alone.
Yeah.
And then you add in the singing and then you add in the dancing, and it's just such a star performance. Yeah. And one that I think, because I've been watching the movie a lot recently, Emma Thompson as Margaret Schlegel in Howard's End. Yes. I'm mad about that character. I love her. I fall more in love with her every single time I see that movie. You've got the restraint, that scene with her and Anthony Hopkins. P.S. Where was his Oscar? That's one of my favorite roles that he does. That repression it's so good. But
Oh, yeah.
they're just delicious, and I love them. I love these characters. I love the performances of them. They're just juicy and wonderful.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of expected answers there. I knew you love Liza. I knew you love Vivian Leigh. Love that you also threw in that Olivia de Havilland, because that's such an excellent performance that more people should see. I don't hear enough people talking about that performance. Um,
Agreed. And I've introduced that movie to so many people,
well, yeah.
and they all agree that she is just stunning,
Yeah.
stunning, stunning.
And that walk up the stairs at the end is so earned. I
Yeah.
love that. As Montgomery
And
Clift is screaming.
she's
So
the
good.
only person who can aggressively do needlepoint. If you can aggressively do needlepoint, like you see her anger, and yet she's also very restrained. There's so many levels there.
Yeah.
She's so poised, and she's taking her time. She's aggressive, but still taking her time. Like, let this guy knock.
Yeah.
And you're just like, yes, yes.
Yeah, I love that performance, and Emma Thompson in Howard's End, which I will get to very soon, actually. So that'll be fun.
I'm mad for Margaret Schlegel. Oh.
Yes. Excellent picks all around. Highly endorse.
Thank you. Yeah.
But my other question for you, what would you say is your most heartbreaking loss in Best Actress?
I think the universal correct answer for this is Judy Garland in A Star is Born. We all know that. That's actually the scientifically proven correct answer to this question.
Yeah.
I am going to go with Ellen Burstyn for Requiem for a Dream.
Wow. I love that.
I am gutted by that performance every time I watch it. I'm also such an Ellen Burstyn fangirl.
Mm-hmm.
I love her. I wasn't a fan of Who She Lost To. I didn't like the other movie that won, and I'm not such a fan of that performance. It kind of irks me, and I know that that's an unpopular opinion. But that monologue of the red dress, they should have literally off stage like handed her the Oscar for that. And also, it's hard because she reminds me of a very beloved mother of a friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago. But every time I watched it, I was like, don't be sad, Mrs. So-and-so. It's going to be okay. Yeah. She's just so harrowing. Not an easy movie to watch, but that she didn't win for that is just wrong.
Yeah, that is just a fearless performance from her, and especially for her to get that role at that age and just totally command the screen. It's shattering. It's a shattering performance. I'm so excited to get to that one too, even though I am also a fan of the winner for different reasons.
I know you are.
But we'll get to it later. Yeah.
And I would say Barbara Ster, and the other ones is people that should have won. I love Judy Holliday, but I also will say that if Gloria Swanson had won for Sunset Boulevard, she would be one of my top winners.
Me too.
Ever.
Yep. I would agree.
But Judy Holliday, we love you.
Yeah, no complaints on that win, but I would have preferred maybe Gloria, but yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about this year at the Oscars. The 57th Academy Awards Best Actress nominees were Judy Davis in A Passage to India, Sally Field in Places in the Heart, Jessica Lange in Country, Vanessa Redgrave in The Bostonians, and Sissy Spacek in The River, with the winner being Sally Field for the second time. So before we break down these performances, Amy, tell me your overall honest opinion on this lineup.
There's only one movie in that lineup that I really actually love.
Okay.
And the rest are a lot of meh.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the only way I can describe it. I was trying to think of some brilliant adjectives. 3 Hallmark films, 1 masterpiece, and 1 pretty good, but compared to the rest of the films that they later did, not so much.
I know the combination you're talking about there, and I pretty much agree. Yeah. Yeah, even though, quite honestly, I don't even personally think that the masterpiece is actually a masterpiece compared to some of his other films.
Compared to the others. And that's the hard thing, because two of the sets of filmmakers are some of my absolute favorites.
Same
but
these
were mid.
Yes, and that's why I did want to just go ahead and thank you for agreeing to do this episode, because this one did not get a lot of takers. This is just one of those lineups that people look back on and don't have the best fondness for it.
Especially compared to the movies that the men were nominated for.
Yeah.
And someone made a comment, like, how much do you wish Amadeus had been nominated for best actress? I know. I love that movie. I watch it all the time.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I wish we could be talking about Amadeus, but regardless, this is a step down for sure from the past few lineups I've been talking about. Not really sure what happened here. This kind of reminds me of what, speaking of Ellen Burstyn, what Ellen Burstyn said in the 70s. I don't know if you remember, for that 1975 Best Actress lineup, where she suggested that people protest by not even voting for Best Actress because of like the lack of opportunities for, women in film and good roles. All I'm going to say is that she maybe should have saved that energy for this year, because I don't know how we got this combination as the 5 best lead actress performances of the year, but I mean, this is obviously the big Save the Farm year, where we have not 1, not 2, but 3 performances where actresses are playing farmers or farmers' wives or farmers' widows. All of them having to save the farm in one way or another, sometimes in overlapping ways. That's just like, I'm confusing some of them in my head, even though I just watched them.
And in some cases, watching the movie and really wondering, really? This person was nominated for this?
Exactly.
Like, because you wait for your best actress moment.
Yes, the Oscar clip.
And there were certain movies where the Oscar moment did not happen. And I'm like,
oh.
Wow. Okay.
You're right.
I guess that's it. Again, especially compared to, we talked about the ones that we love. I mean, Emma Thompson, Scarlett O'Hara, like, these are juicy, delicious roles. And these are so, wow, was she even really in the movie that much? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have a Scarlett O'Hara or a Margaret Schlegel to be found here. Plus, I do think we have a performance that is borderline lead supporting for me in the case of Judy Davis. We'll talk about that.
Oh, interesting, because that's not who I was thinking of.
There's also another one
have a good
as well.
This is going to be a good conversation.
Yeah. And you have a controversial actress in the case of Vanessa Redgrave getting nominated for a film that barely anyone saw. So I don't know.
And you can see why. No.
Well, no, kind of, yeah. And it's nothing against these actresses at all, but I just really struggle to believe that this is kind of like the best they could do. Either way, I'm so excited to have you here, because I know you can spice up a lineup that is pretty dull on the whole.
Oh, I'll add my spin. Yes. I've got takes.
Yes. Before we get into it, I just wanted to read this quote from a blogger, not a blogger, they didn't have bloggers in 1984, but a writer for a newspaper at the time, who said, "It used to be an actress had to play a hooker to be guaranteed a nomination. Now she's got to milk a cow." Which,
bravo!
Yeah, not wrong.
That's
in this
case.
A
good line.
Yep.
Well done, writer.
Yes. So anyway, let's jump right into it, starting with Judy Davis in A Passage to India. So Judy Davis, I think, is another one of those actresses who has a lot of great performances in her career and is very well respected, but also somehow only has like 1 or 2 nominations at the Oscars over the course of a huge, long career, sort of like Liv Ullmann, Jenna Rowlands, where the Oscar record does not really match like her talent, really.
Henry Fonda, two nominations.
Another good one,
Henry Fonda.
I know, right?
What?
Like, how does this happen? Right. That's kind of how I feel about Judy Davis too. She has been well awarded with other groups like the Golden Globe. She's won multiple Emmys. She's won a lot of critics awards. The critics love her. So Judy Davis, she's an Australian actress. She's actually the first Australian-born actress to be nominated in this category since May Robson way back in the 30s. We'll get plenty more Australians down the line, as we know, but
we love them. We
sure do,
them.
Don't we? Yes. But for Judy, she emerged with this big breakout performance in My Brilliant Career, which was directed by Gillian Armstrong. She won at BAFTA for that performance. She got all kinds of critical acclaim and went on to do more Australian film. She was also in a TV movie called A Woman Called Golda alongside Ingrid Bergman, which she got an Emmy nomination for as the younger version of Ingrid Bergman. That's interesting. And then she had her international breakthrough with A Passage to India, which is the final film from our beloved fave, David Lean. This is also an adaptation of the E.M. Forster novel, and it's about a British woman, Adela Quested, played by Judy Davis, who takes the passage to India, where she is traveling with her mother-in-law to be, I don't know a better way to describe that, Mrs. Moore.
Almost mother-in-law to be ish, because she hasn't even really decided to marry the guy. I always thought that was kind of a weird point.
Yeah,
like, who travels
strange.
with a woman of a guy that you're not even sure if you want to get married to? But okay,
yeah, weird
you're enforced. We'll go with it.
yes. So they're going to India to meet up with Adela's fiance, who is the magistrate in this fictional city in India, Chandrapur. So they basically want to experience life in India, both of them trying to see past like the tourist version of India. And they end up meeting this local Dr. Aziz, who is very kind to them. And then the fourth member of the ensemble is Richard Fielding, an English school superintendent in India who has a friendship with Dr. Aziz as well as Adela. And one day, Dr. Aziz is persuaded to bring Adela deep into the Marabar caves, where some kind of incident happens that we don't physically see, but is heavily implied, that causes a huge public scandal. So, yes, let's get started here, Amy. We got David Lean, we got E.M. Forster, also Judy Davis.
We've got Alec Guinness playing a brown-skinned person.
That is
again.
also true, but we'll look past that.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so awful.
Yeah. Also, Judy Davis, we have actually talked about, you and I and Tom, our beloved third colleague there, talking with her other Oscar-nominated performance in Husbands and Wives. So, yeah, excited to get your take on this. Thoughts on Judy Davis and her performance here?
Judy Davis is a phenomenal actress. There's not much more you can say. She's amazing. She does these really twisted characters.
Good word for
that
it.
Always have a little bit of darkness to them. And I am here for it. I love Judy Davis having a breakdown is just catnip for me. And she's always a little on the edge because she's always a little unbalanced in the characters that she chooses. And she does it brilliantly. A Passage to India. What a movie to go out on, David Lean. It's not Bridge on the River Kwai, which is my personal favorite. It's not Lawrence of Arabia. However, it's nothing to sneeze at either. This man can do an epic like nobody's business because he can do the epic and the spectacle and still have these really fully developed complicated characters, which I think epics haven't pretty much done since David Lean.
Yeah.
There's my shout out to him. But Judy Davis always plays these twisted, on the edge characters, and she does it so well. I love her performance in this because Adela is such a complicated character. She seems to simmer almost the entire movie. She's very repressed. And you can tell that she's got her collar all buttoned up and there's a pin, but every now and then her collar is open during these moments where she feels free. And there's definitely a lot of sexual repression in there. And when you see her with her fiance, you really wonder, these two have no chemistry together whatsoever. And they're not supposed to. It's not lack of acting. It's just these characters are so very stereotypically British, even when she breaks up with the fiance and she's like, I don't think we should get married. And he's like, okay. And she says, aren't we just being so British about this? And they are. There's no heat, but there's something about India that, like the ladies in the Black Narcissus, that is stirring her up.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it. And she goes on her little bike and the sun's hitting her and you can tell it's kind of starting to mess with her brain a little bit. And she's looking at all this erotic art and you can feel just with her facial expressions that there's a whole lot going on in her body that she has never felt before. And it scares her. And then they have those wild animals too. So making those sounds, and
Yeah.
she races back to the house, and she's all flustered and patting her chest and everything. And I don't want to say it's fun to watch, but it is fun to watch. And then when she asks Dr. Aziz, because she can tell, she feels that India is this very sexual, open place, but she starts to make assumptions about her Indian friend. And he is very offended by when she asks him, oh, did you have more than one wife? Did you love your wife? I always interpreted that as, I think she had some feelings for him, or some desires for
That's
him.
absolutely what I felt too. Yeah.
But it's subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And you just feel, I think she's got a little feelings for him. And she's flustered, and he is so upset. And I feel like there's a lot of the British attitude about the exotic.
Oh yeah.
The way they look at the Japanese, the way they look at the Chinese. They like people of color because they see them as very erotic. And it's almost her stereotypes, as well as this is a kind man who's very attractive.
Yeah.
And very intelligent, and someone that she can actually talk to, unlike the ice cube that she's engaged to, that she has no chemistry with. And I've only ever seen that actor in Chariots of Fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how I recognize
Me
him.
too.
But her scene in the cave, masterful, the way that it is filmed. And you just see her she's starting to lose it. And as much as you know what's going to happen, you still feel for her a little bit, because she clearly she is greatly disturbed. And she runs out, and she's got the blood, and she looks like a crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
And guy gets falsely accused, even though from the way in the movie, I never thought that she was the one that really accused him. I thought it was that couple that kind of planted the idea in her head.
Mm-hmm.
And that she really did not know what was going on. But I feel like her character is very noble at the end, when she was under oath, and how brave she is. And she admits she was wrong, and she's trying to remember the story, and she's having flashbacks. And it's such a dramatic moment while still very subtle and believable. It's such an amazing performance. And I absolutely think she was the lead. When I read up and found out that Peggy Ashcroft won the BAFTA, I think.
Yeah, she did.
What? What? That's right up there. That makes me angry. I don't know why. That and Maggie Smith getting Best Actress BAFTA for A Room with a View, and you're like,
yeah, that's very strange. That one in
what?
particular.
Maybe you need to see it again, because in no way, especially with Maggie Smith, was this woman the lead. She's not the main character. Like, what? But Judy Davis should have been showered with attention for this movie, because she's incredible, and she played such a complicated role, psychologically, a challenging role, and physical.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Judy Davis is one of those great, the word I like to use is spiky actresses.
Yes.
Who just has such an intelligence. She's so sharp. She reminds me a lot of like Glenda Jackson in that sense.
Yes.
Not only in like her style, but like even physically in this movie, she looks similar to Glenda Jackson.
Yes. Her eyes, I think.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I do think by the time we get to like the trial at the end of the film, she does separate herself from that Glenda Jackson comparison, because she is more sympathetic, But yeah, she's fantastic. You can revisit our discussion on Judy and Husbands and Wives. I think if Marissa Tomei was not there, she would have easily gotten my vote for Husbands and Wives. And I think she's really good here, when the film actually does focus on her, because I do think this is a true like ensemble film where it's sort of about her, but it's hard to say if this is like her story. Like, it's kind of Dr. Aziz's story by the end, and so it's just like, it kind of is constantly shifting. It sort of starts as her and Mrs. Moore, just like going, and then it does feel like it just kind of shifts over by the end. But at the same time, I do think for me that it does shortchange the impact of Judy's performance by the end. Like, she gets some really good stuff in the beginning where, like, before her voyage, she has this sort of like searching energy, like very eager to take it all in. And I think eager to obviously escape British society. She wants to see the world. She wants to go, well, I mean, really exploring these Indian caves. but she's not like naive in the way that she presents herself. You know, there's kind of like this very cunning quality to Judy Davis. Like she has these like wicked little smiles, and I think that makes her a really interesting fit for this kind of narrative. Having this
Mm-hmm.
like sharp, clever kind of woman and putting her in a foreign environment, and it's like she's either gonna embrace it and like find some kind of enlightenment or happiness, like Katharine Hepburn in Summertime, for example, or you have this where like she's a little cold and not always forthcoming, and she also is like understanding the kind of what's happening on a kind of political class divide level, but she's
Mm-hmm.
not really giving herself over to really appreciating where she is outside of just like the curiosity she has for the caves, like on an intellectual level almost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that Judy just has like the right combination of someone who's quick and smart and all these things, but also a little sour. And I think that really fits the character, even if it does have like a bit of a distancing effect for me when you're watching, because you're kind of trying to figure out like what's this woman's deal, you know?
What's her deal?
Yeah.
Yes, because it's a very complicated role. So even at
Yeah.
the end, and we all know the guy is innocent,
Yeah.
yet, and you want to totally hate her.
Hmm.
The fact that there's something about the way that it's done, you still feel for her
Yeah.
because she did do the right thing at the end, which you don't expect her to do. And she loses everything. And when she leaves that courtroom, she's just so lost
Yeah.
because she's just clearly experienced something on the witness stand, just a flashback. It's almost like she has post traumatic stress
Yeah.
disorder
I think so.
a little bit. And she's like being brushed along and she's not even paying attention until Henry Fielding's like, hey, like, stop for a minute. Like, you're not safe to walk out there by yourself. Let me get you. And she's just sort of like, almost like she doesn't care what happens to her anymore. And so you wouldn't expect to feel that way, and yet you do. And
Yeah.
good for her.
Yeah. Definitely. I also really just enjoy it's not really like satirical necessarily, but just when they do go to those more political places with it, I think that sort of like intellectualism that she has is kind of
Hmm.
represented in her saying she wants to see the real India, not the kind of like English tourist version of India. And she makes
Yes.
a lot of interesting choices, like in her facial reactions when she's just around other English people who are, you know, subtly or not so subtly revealing their racism and their prejudice, like her cringing when one of them
Hmm.
is like openly surprised that an Indian woman knows a bit of English.
Oh,
Or like there's a conversation she has with Fielding, I think, about just like the awkwardness of this kind of mixer event that they're having with the English and the Indians, and kind of tossing off this sort of judgment and how she wants to meet real Indians, but like also she's not really making a lot of effort to like talk to any of them unless it's like an arrangement. So
she's not. And in a
that part of it
way,
is interesting.
she's almost objectifying them.
Yeah.
And so it's that balance. It's like in some ways she's more polite and stuff, but in the same ways she's
She's
objectifying
just as
them
bad as the others who she's
as
judging.
everyone else.
Yeah,
And I liked that aspect about her. And I, like I said, I always felt that she was attracted to Dr. Aziz.
for sure. Yeah.
And
And
that to me, that's what kind of caused her little mental breakdowns
yeah,
down, because she had several times throughout the film.
that's true. It's a recurring thing. David Lean actually said something to that effect of the reason that he cast Judy Davis is that she said, like, this character cannot cope with her own sexuality. And he said that that kind of like insight is what made him cast her, which I think is absolutely what's happening here. Like, to go back to what you were talking about with the scene before she goes biking and in that sort of overgrown field of everything and finds that like
Mm-hmm.
temple building, and then all
Yeah.
the erotic sculptures going on there. And it's like she's kind of titillated by that, but also a little disturbed at the same time. And she doesn't know
She
how to cope
is.
with it.
And it's all in her face and in her
Yeah,
body
she doesn't
language.
have to say anything
It's
and to get what she's going through right there.
yes, like I said, those parts reminded me a lot of Black Narcissus.
Yeah.
Another movie which I totally worship, by the way. Like, you expect her to start putting on some pink lipstick.
Yeah, and right, like all the monkey kind of like descending on the building
The
stuff.
ripe vegetation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It
how quickly she gets out of there. It's a
mm-hmm.
brilliant piece of acting.
And it's a little bit like that classic sort of white person encroaching on like another territory out of curiosity and a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
arrogance, I would say, too, and just being
Yes.
so rattled by what's actually there. And yeah, that's what kind of makes her come crawling back to Ronnie and like
For protection.
right, like begging him to basically forget what she said before. And from then on, I think she's really so excellent here in terms of just being so haunted by what she's seen, the eroticism of it, which I think she just gives such a discomfort in her body language, but without
Yeah.
like putting it all out there, just how uncomfortable she is. You know, it's kind
Yes.
of like this secret thing that we see in the audience.
And that trying to hold it together, that's some of my
Yes,
favorite things when
I love
actresses
that.
have to play that. Like, I am losing it, but I have to get home. I have to be with my British people now and
Yes.
make polite conversation and button my blouse back up to my neck. It's her shirt, like, again, the buttons on her collar are so symbolic to the film.
Yeah,
And it's such a
absolutely.
small detail, but that's what David Lean does well.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think a great example of that detail is how they film the whole cave sequence where they're going off on their own. And yeah, those like asking him very personal questions about his life and multiple wives. And she is definitely becoming very curious about him. I do agree in a kind of romantic sense. And her entering the cave on her own, and he's following her in, and she seems to have some kind of like psychosomatic response in the cave that just causes her to run out screaming. And I love all the ambiguity of that
Yeah.
sequence and how you can't quite pin down exactly what happened and or even how she's feeling throughout all this, but it's also
Yeah.
vague enough in her body language and in the editing that like there's not some easy thing you can take away from it. It's kind of like up to your interpretation.
And I imagine that scene, because that's how it is in the book, very vague, but
Yep.
that again being really pulled off. And that's a difficult scene because if you don't do that right, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And when Aziz comes in and he's trying to be gentle, but at the same time his voice is booming all around.
Mhm.
It's the guy never had a chance, and it's so painful to watch.
Yeah, because you kind of know what's going to happen from there, unfortunately. So, yeah, but I
Mhm.
mean, the trial, I think, is really just her big moment overall in the
That's
whole
the Oscar
film.
moment.
It really is. You know, whenever someone's on the stand, there's a good chance it's their Oscar moment. Meryl Streep
But
in Kramer versus Kramer, Marissa Tomei, as we've talked about. So, anyway, yeah, I think this is a great one for her.
and I love the lawyer who's just like, "Wait, what? No, 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 no. Shh, like, stop
Right.
talking." And when is like, "Yeah, I don't really love the guy I'm supposed to marry," and I was like, and then it shows the guy like, "Oh my god, did you
I
really
know.
just say it in
In
public?"
front of everyone. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yes.
she has such a vulnerability there in her recollections of the incident and this feeling that
Mhm.
she's kind of like rediscovering the truth as she's talking it through and having
Yeah.
this very real like trauma response. You know, you can feel like the discomfort and the sweat that is just like dripping off of her in that moment and that
Yes,
feeling
and
of
she's
guilt, you know, by the
shaking
end.
and drinking the water,
Yeah.
and even the reveal, it's not this triumphant like, "Okay, I lied. It never happened." It wasn't this big dramatic thing. She
Right.
just was like, "This has all been a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go home now."
Yeah.
Like, just that's it. Like, she just kinda wants to slink away. It's not this big burst of energy. Yeah, you get that moment in a minute, out in a moment, but that this has all just been a terrible mistake, and she's
Yeah.
feeling all the things, and just she needs to get out of there because she's in the middle of having a breakdown.
I think that's very realistic from her and just, you know, David Lean and his direction. I think it is the more realistic track
I
for
love
it.
David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, also late by the end, like her breaking down after the fact when she realizes that Mrs. Moore has died, because it's like that's kind of like her only real connection left of any real meaning by that point, and someone who was such a positive kind of presence in her life compared to
Yeah.
anyone else in the film, I would say. So I think, yeah, again, that vulnerability, I think she really, really taps into. And I don't think that's something that you often associate with Judy Davis, that kind of vulnerability, but
No,
she does.
very, very good job.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I will just reiterate my point that I kind of feel like she's not the lead. You can make an argument that she is kind of co-leading. I just feel like this is one of those ensemble films where no one and everyone is the lead, if that makes
True.
sense. So that's why I'm kind of like, maybe that contributed to her losing here. I'm not sure. We'll talk about that later, but
I have a few ideas why maybe she didn't win.
yes. Okay. Any other thoughts on Miss Judy Davis before we move on?
No, I just, like I said, he and David Lean does such a great job getting wonderful, heartbreaking, nuanced female performances.
He sure does.
Celia Jackson Johnson,
God.
I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
I listened to that the other day. Oh, was there anything that woman couldn't do with her eyes in that movie?
I know. Yeah. Then her and Katharine Hepburn in Summertime, like I said. So let's move on to our next nominee, Jessica Lange in Country. So now Jessica Lange is getting her third Oscar nomination after her banner year in 1982, where she was nominated for Frances and won for Tootsie. And as expected, she gets many, many interesting opportunities after her Oscar win, including this same year in 1984, getting to play Maggie the Cat in a TV production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And then with Country, she is reuniting with her Frances co-star, Sam Shepard, who also happens to be her husband by that point. They married in 1982, and they are co-leading Country, which is, at this time in 1984, a very topical film that has to do with the farm crisis of the 80s. So the two of them play Jewel and Gil Ivey, who work on Jewel's family farm alongside their kids and Jewel's father, I think, or grandfather. I'm not.
Yes.
I think it's father. Anyway, Wilford Brimley is always.
Who, yeah. After watching this, I said we should change his name to America's Grandpa.
Truly, yeah. But one day they are met with the realities of the farming crisis, which has to do with lowered crop prices and FHA loans, with the FHA threatening that they'll have to foreclose on their farm if they don't pay just an exorbitant amount of money within 30 days. So Jewel and Gil try to take action against this and fight for their livelihoods, and they're rallying the neighbors in their community to basically protest in the hope of saving the farm. So let's talk about it. This is the first of our three, what they call Dust Bowl trilogy here. Thoughts on the great Jessica Lange and her performance here?
Jessica Lange is everything that people say about her. She is the understatement, but just to say it simply, she is a wonderful actress who always delivers. I forget because she plays that her career is still so strong. I loved her in Feud. I loved her in American Horror Story. And in these younger roles, I almost forgot how soft her voice was.
Yeah.
In the 80s, because when you're playing Joe Crawford, you're not going to have a soft voice. But, and she did so well in that role. Mm-hmm. I know you watched that miniseries.
I sure did.
Mr. Jacobson.
You caught me. It's basically made for me, but yeah, go on.
Yes. Oh no, all of them. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm so yeah. All those things are just so the target audience. But that she has that softness to her in the 80s, and I'd almost forgotten that. I never heard of this movie before ever, so I didn't know what to expect. This was the third one I watched. I watched it after The River. Mm-hmm. And what a character, again, that she has that softness. You see her with her kids. You see her with the friend that has the son with disabilities. And she's so compassionate, and she's such a strong mom, yet, and has that soft voice, that 1980s Jessica Lange voice. And then she is a badass. She literally kicks ass in this movie, and it is so satisfying to watch. And the whole time, I love the moments, and all of these movies, but especially with her, when the banker's like, "You're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to do it." And she's like, "You listen to me." And you're like, do not tell Jessica Lange that she's not going to be able to do something because,
That's right.
sir, she is Miss Jessica Lange and she is going to do it.
Do you know who you're
And
dealing with here?
yes, do you know who you're dealing with? We're dealing with Miss Jessica Lange. And I love that. I love that she is so strong and yet so kind and soft and tender when her husband is literally beating up her son. That not only does she pull him off, she picks up that piece of wood and fights back with him. Oh, when he hit her,
Yeah.
I actually gasped. I
Mhm.
literally went,
I know.
because it wasn't a slap, it was like a punch in the
Yeah,
face.
you could feel the
And,
impact of that. Yeah.
and I gasped and flinched. And all I could think about was, I'm sorry, sir. Did you just punch Miss Jessica Lange? And you think she's going to cower and cry, which I would do if somebody punched me in the face. But that she gets back up, grabs that piece of wood, and starts fighting back. I was like, yes, queen. This is why we love you so much, Jessica. Like, this is why decades from now you will play Joan Crawford because you are so awesome
Yep.
and strong. And when she's watching her auction stuff get auctioned off and she starts chanting "no sale," which they do in another movie, which kind of
They
made me
do.
laugh. You
I
watch them
know.
on when you watch them on the same day, it kind of makes you laugh.
Wild.
But she is phenomenal in this film. Is it her best work as far as her best film? No, because the film is not that much. The film doesn't say very much. It's moving, it's powerful, but considering it was done so many times that year, it
Yeah.
wasn't this groundbreaking idea. But she gives a fiery, fiery performance, and she's wonderful in a film that I don't think is worthy of her talents.
Yeah, I think this is a step down from Frances for sure. I think she's good in the role, but I also sort of feel like Jessica Lange is kind of always good or almost always good. And this is one of those performances that's like good for what it is, but for me personally doesn't fully stand out in a way that is calling for her to be Oscar nominated. And that's okay. Like, I don't
True.
really love the film. I kind of know what it's going for, but it's obviously trying to be like this sort of understated slice of life drama about the plight of rural folk. And there's like a simplicity in the approach that I can appreciate. And I think the sort of themes, obviously, of like worker struggles against the man are very relevant, even still to this day. It's just that the story, I find, like, especially the personal drama, just feels very standard to me, I guess. Like, he drinks too much and she has to put up with it. They have precocious kids. For me, it's just kind of been there, done that, honestly. But for her performance, like, she has a nice earthy quality that obviously works for the character. She doesn't seem too out of place in this kind of environment compared to like maybe other bigger actresses at this time, maybe that could
Oh
have been
yeah.
in the role like this. And I love how, sort of like you're saying, she is very direct and upfront when she is provoked, like when she's upset, like even like smaller things, like in the beginning with their son found with like a condom in his wallet or something, and she's gonna confront him about it, like indirectly, but still. Yeah, she just fits that grounded kind of character, someone who's tough but also feminine and soft at the same time, and kind of convincing as both things. And
Really?
it is kind of interesting to see her like stretching beyond what she was maybe known for up to that point. So yeah, it's an interesting choice for her. I kind of feel like this is like putting her performance of Frances and Tootsie kind of like in a blender, where you have
Yeah.
like the centered and very like direct quality of Frances and the intelligence, plus the kind of like sweet feminine thing of Tootsie, and it works surprisingly well. I don't know
It
if a lot of
does.
people could pull that off.
No, and you believe it. When she's tender and kind and asks her friend, like, let me know if you need anything. And when she's the one that's talking to the guy, like right before he commits suicide, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
You don't have to see this movie, people at home. This is not what I'm pushing on you. But when the sun at the beginning in the grain and they're pulling their son out, like I
Yes,
believe that she has the strength to do that.
me too.
But she has those quiet moments. And I remember I there was a moment that made me think of Tootsie when she gets quiet and she kind of does this thing with her mouth, like she kind of mushes her lips together and kind of moves them around a little bit, like while she's trying not to cry.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about? Like
that's a classic Jessica Lange
it's
vulnerability
that
thing.
Jessica Lange thing, and it works.
Mhm.
Even though I was like, I remember her doing that in Tootsie, and it was very effective. That even though to me, Terry Garr 1,000% should have been. If
Well, yeah,
anyone from
that's
Tootsie
another
was gonna win,
discussion.
the nominees that year for Best Supporting Actress were like off the charts. Like really,
Yeah.
you can't begrudge any of them.
And
But
then the worst one won. But anyway,
exactly.
just
We don't
saying.
have opinions on this. We don't have opinions on
Right.
this. Exactly. The worst one won. Because you gotta love Leslie Ann Warren too, because she's just
Exactly. Kim
so
Stanley and
anyway,
Francis. Glenn Close is there. Come on.
yeah, exactly. But she still does that vulnerability when she talks and she gets quiet and she mashes her lips together and she's trying not to cry and she has those moments, but they're all very believable.
Yeah.
And she definitely elevated a Hallmark movie script because
Yeah.
let's call
That's
it what it is.
that's very
Especially
much the case.
especially compared to A Passage to India, which if A Passage to India, the worst thing you can say is it wasn't David Lean's best epic. It's still better than 99% of films.
And I do think some of that sweetness, she is even able to elevate again that Hallmark quality where there's like a moment at the breakfast table where her husband said like he almost died at one point in his life when he saw her in history class, and that's how they fell in love or something, which is kind of like this eye rolly thing. But you
Uh-huh.
can see in her face as he's saying this how much in love she is with him, even when he's being a little too much with like dad joke kind of thing, or when she's
Yeah.
like talking to him about like talking to their son about the condom situation, and he says he'll give him like the honor speech, which is like get on her, stay on her, like all these stupid little
Yes.
remarks, but also her kind of like giggling like they're in high school again and like fooling around. I don't know, there's just such
Mhm.
a like a sexual romantic charge between them, like they're really into each other, which they were in real life, so that's not like
And
a
Sam
huge stretch.
Shepard was a cutie. He was a
He was.
cutie, even
Yeah.
though he played such a dirtbag in that movie
Yeah.
for the most part, for most of the movie. But at the same time, he was very good, and he was especially after Wilford Brimley's like, "You're such a loser. I wish you had never come here." You were like,
Yeah.
Wilford Brimley, that wasn't very nice, Grandpa. Like, damn.
Yeah, he's kind of a grump, but
He always
um
is.
yeah.
We need a cranky old man. Get Brimley in here.
So I think ultimately it's kind of like another Judy Davis situation where the best stuff happens after like this big turning point incident. And with this one, it's her getting the letter in the mail about needing to pay their loans within a month, and this kind of like panic and the helplessness of facing this idea of like losing everything that they've worked for and their livelihood, and her still insisting that like, you know what, we can figure this out. There's like this feeling that in the way she carries herself that she still wants to kind of like play by the rules and not make a fuss, that they could just sit down and figure it out. And it's not even like an anger or like frustration, it's just kind of like, well, we've been screwed over by life again, and now we just have to find our way out of this one,
Good fighting.
you know so it is pretty realistic in how she plays it, especially compared to her husband, who does react very emotionally with anger. And I think, like, not to paint too broad a brush, but it does sort of track with the kind of responses you would expect of like a traditional husband wife dynamic, who
Yeah.
like facing a problem like this of like the man is gonna like act out and just like be very upset about it, and his wife is going to be a little more reserved and like trying to sit down at the table and figure things
And
out.
figure it out. The woman's gonna, and I kind of felt that way when I
Yeah,
watched it. And
right.
no disrespect to straight husbands out there, but a lot of times it's the woman who's like, okay, you go crazy and have your fit. I'm
Exactly.
going to sit here and I'm going to make a list and brainstorm and figure out what we need to do. And she's going to go in and she's going to remain calm the first time she goes to the bank and she's doing the mouth and the eye thing that we all love. And then she's like no, are you insane? How am I supposed to get this money together? That's nuts. And then she comes up with a plan and she fights. She's not
She
giving
fights.
up. She's not gonna hit the bottle, and she's still
No.
gonna be a great community member and be there for her children and the guy that lost his son or whatever.
Yeah.
She's been
And
there for everybody.
it's after the bank starts outright taking action against them that she starts to really fight, like taking those sheep
Hmm.
away from that guy who had been
Yep.
keeping them at the farm for safekeeping, and she does put up a fight. But yeah, it's just interesting to see her like gradually turning on the gas a little bit with what the kind of power that we know of Jessica Lange, you know. So by the time we get to that obviously big moment of the stuff at the auction and everything, that's where you see, okay, this is the Jessica Lange we know and love. Kind of just
And
like,
you know, and you want to warn the guys at the bank, like, you don't know Jessica Lange like we do. She is gonna save that farm. You're gonna go down. Just wait, because
yeah,
it's coming.
yeah.
Because it's Miss Jessica Lange.
Her line where she says, "You can come with your piece of paper, but we're staying right here." Like, it is over the top and hallmarky
Yes.
in dialogue, but even the way that she delivers it, I think, is still convincing, you know?
Very,
So
very.
I think it's solid work from her. It's just, again, not really up to her best, and that's more of a material problem than a her problem, I would argue, with this
Exactly.
one.
It's not an Oscar winning
No.
role or movie.
And as I like to say, we've seen much worse in this category. So I will
Yes.
take someone who's putting in solid work over someone that I can't stand, for example, which,
In a better film. You know what I mean?
right, yeah, exactly. All right, I don't really have too much else for Jessica Lange, unfortunately, but
No,
shall we move on?
we shall.
Okay, let's take a break from the farm and we'll go to,
Go to Boston.
yeah, we're shipping up to Boston. All right. Vanessa Redgrave in The Bostonians. Okay, so Vanessa Redgrave is now an Oscar winner. We've talked about her with Morgan, Isadora, Mary Queen of Scots, all in lead. But then she wins Best Supporting Actress for Julia in 1977, causing quite a stir there with her Oscar speech. So after that point, she was still active in film and television, but I think she said later that she thinks she may have been blacklisted from bigger opportunities after she said what she said at the Oscars. Either way, she was still very politically active after this. She wins an Emmy for the TV movie Playing for Time, where she played a Jewish woman in a concentration camp. So more controversy there, but
That's just what I was thinking. How apropos.
yeah, I know. But so she wins the Emmy. Eventually, she signs on to The Bostonians, which is our first of quite a few Merchant Ivory productions that we'll be talking about in Best Actress, especially in the 90s. Directed by James Ivory, and it's an adaptation of the Henry James novel. So apparently, Vanessa was a little unsure about signing on at first. She said something to the effect of not really liking the character the way that it was presented or treated in the original novel. So at one point, there was a suggestion that Glenn Close could play the role, but she turned it down to work with Robert Redford in The Natural, which I don't
A
blame her. But
wise choice, Glenn.
yes.
Glenn. You're always one step ahead of us.
Right? Yeah.
There's nothing you can't do, Glenn.
Thank you. I agree. So took the words right out of my mouth. Anyway,
Glenn could save a farm. What could Glenn Close do? Glenn Close could save a farm.
I know that's right. It does obviously come back to Vanessa, and she apparently was like engaged in long conversations with James Ivory about his approach, and she eventually agreed to play the role. And it's set in the 1800s in America, and it's about Olive Chancellor, played by Vanessa, who's a suffragette, and she finds herself moved by a political speech by this young woman, Verena, played by Madeline Potter, and she takes her on as a kind of protege, while seemingly having some feelings for her, perhaps. And meanwhile, Olive's cousin Basil, played by Christopher Reeve, is also interested in Verena, but he's a big-time chauvinist, and Olive is trying to get away from him, even though Verena actually does have this connection with him that sort of defies any political lines. So yeah, let's talk Vanessa Redgrave, Amy. Again, this is a Merchant Ivory production. I know we both have a bit of a soft spot for Merchant Ivory. And also, we have actually discussed Vanessa Redgrave before in that 1992 year with Howard's End. So yeah, anyway, tell me your further thoughts on Miss Redgrave and her performance here.
I respect Vanessa Redgrave, but I will say she's not a personal favorite. And like I said, I respect her. I think she's a great actress. I don't necessarily go out of my way to watch her movies. I worship Howard's End. She is wonderful as Howard in Howard's End. However, I leave Howard's End thinking, how did Helena Bonham Carter not get the nominee for Best Supporting Actress?
Yeah.
But it's okay. And she's, like I said, she's a Redgrave. And this whole movie kind of left me cold. It felt very room temperature to me. It's definitely not one of Merchant Ivory's best. It's not even one of Henry James's best. So it's just it gets the job done, but I feel that's kind of it. I didn't like the casting choice of Christopher Reeve. I thought he was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's kind of a disaster.
Really, and that considering he's such an important role in the movie, it's like
one of the leads. So not great.
And Jessica
that accent is just not great.
It's horrifically awful. Like, it's like, what in the world? Did they cast him at the last minute? Like, I don't know what happened there, but it really almost kind of ruins the film.
Yeah.
Jessica Tandy's there for some reason as some old lady, but it's just, the movie gave me a lot of question marks. Vanessa Redgrave was good. She did the job, but it was definitely, there was nothing about that performance that made me think, wow, clearly this is why she was nominated. She did not have an Oscar moment, in my opinion. I kept waiting for it. But one thing that she does do very well is she has such expressive eyes. And so her character, you definitely feel that pain and longing that Henry James just loves to give his characters. Pain and longing, she could do that all day long with her eyes. But she's not a very likable character. I, as a woman, I was like, yes, she's all about politics. You know, she's saying all the right things. I believe all that she feels. But in my opinion, I thought she was a little creepy. And it almost reminded me a lot of Notes on a Scandal. With sort of the older, and it's going to sound awful, and I don't mean this in any kind of offensive way, but it seemed very almost an older kind of predatory woman having very strong feelings about the young ingenue.
Yeah.
And it's very uncomfortable to watch. And so it definitely did not give me the feeling of, oh my gosh, this woman is in love and it's wonderful and I'm rooting for her. It was more like, back off a little. Like, you're kind of being a little creepy. And because it seemed very predatory to me as opposed to mutual. And I felt like the character of Verena it seemed like she was very emotionally manipulative, because Verena clearly wants to be with Christopher Reeve. But every time she wants to go, she said, I can't, because essentially Olive is going to die if I don't devote my life to everything that she wants.
Yeah.
And it's really uncomfortable to watch and really cringy, instead of being this interesting. And I get it. When it was written by a man who really has some, if you've read enough of his work like I have, he really has opinions on women, and especially American women. He's not a fan. And it was just uncomfortable. And she portrayed that all very, very well. But I can't say that I really liked it. But she gives a decent performance. You can tell that she has these strong feelings, those longing glances. She does all that very well. But I was a little confused and uncomfortable by the character.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely get that. I think we might actually disagree on this performance, perhaps. I think, despite not really loving this film either, It was a breath of fresh air, personally, to watch a kind of like costume drama after all this stuff to do with the farm and like trying to
Yeah,
survive in the elements, all that stuff. Here, I do
agree.
think we get something a
Agree.
little more complex where the conflict is more internal rather than external. Not saying one is better than the other, but
Oh
usually
yeah.
that like internal conflict is what gives greater opportunity maybe for actors to really show their stuff.
Mhm.
And I think Vanessa Redgrave does that to great effect here, personally. I think she's playing this woman who's kind of like caught between the old world and the new world, where she's like, ingratiated into this high society, but she also is trying to be progressive and like push things forward with her activism. And I do think you see layers there of that inner conflict, and like combined with the other factor of her not having a romantic partner, but like finding herself so drawn to this woman at this time when obviously that kind of relationship would raise more than a few eyebrows. So she is kind of working with a lot internally. And I don't know if it's always super apparent to your average viewer what she's doing, but I really, really like her work here. I think she is by far the best part of the film, because
Oh
I also
yeah.
think Madeline Potter is not very charismatic either as Verena. And so I'm kind of just like, what am I left with here? And I definitely attach myself to her, even if I sort of agree that she's a very flawed human being. But I did think that she really emerges as the MVP here with how she is just trying to sort of navigate this very conservative world, and is almost trying to create like this like matriarchal society almost. And you notice like throughout the film how she talks with men versus women, and like
She doesn't.
this well, yeah,
That's what
she
I
doesn't
noticed
make a habit of it.
Every time Christopher Reeve talks to her, she's literally completely facing away from him with a head in a book,
Yeah,
and he's trying,
I
and
don't even
it's
want to
hard.
engage. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, get away from me, I hate you. Which you
Yeah.
gotta respect, because he is such a doof.
Yeah, very strange casting choice. So I actually really did find myself impressed by her, because I'm going to be honest, listeners know this. I have not always been impressed with Vanessa Redgrave. I do think there is kind of just like an aloof quality to her that has this very, again, like distancing effect that I've talked about before. But I actually think that that effect is put to pretty good use here, So I do think she is very well cast as opposed to most people in the movie.
Exactly, and the younger one, but for some reason, I guess I'm a little, it really made me think of Notes on a Scandal,
I
just
mean,
the
I definitely get what you're going for there. Yeah.
being an, which
Yeah.
one of those people who won for the wrong thing. That I think is one of Judy Dench's best performances.
It's
And you
my
also
favorite.
have
Yeah.
Blanchett,
Hmm.
who you can see why she was so obsessed with her. But this young little ingenue, I was like, why do
Her?
people think she is just, yeah, why? Why? Especially since they have so many interesting, that decade, what, the next year is A Room with a View. Like,
Yeah.
if you had a young Helena Bonham Carter, I would have been like, absolutely, she's
Oh my
luminous and
God. That's exactly who needs to be in this role. You just solved it.
yes, yes. I could have saved this whole movie.
Now I'm mad that it's not Helena Bonham Carter. Anyway.
I know,
Uh,
right? She would have been perfect. And you would have bought the fact that everyone was like, she's so beautiful. Her voice is so great. Everyone's just so in love with her.
mm-hmm.
She's a
Wow.
better actress.
Yeah. Yep. So
There's that. But thank
there it
God
is.
that he discovered her and put her to good use in other films.
Yeah, the comparison that I came out of the movie thinking of, even though I love that Notes on a Scandal comparison, is the kind of dynamic we see in Julia, with ironically Vanessa Redgrave there too, and Jane Fonda. The idea of
Yeah.
them being kind of like bonded by political causes and ideas and curiosity and all these things, except like the dynamic is switched, where in that
Mhm.
movie, Jane Fonda was kind of obsessed with Vanessa Redgrave and her ideas in Julia, whereas here, Vanessa is that like admiring kind of role. Were there scenes for you that stood out? I mean, you already said that you didn't think there was an Oscar scene, so.
No, the end was very interesting.
Yeah.
That tension of, is she going to go on stage? Is she not going to go on stage? And when she finally, it's like she's holding her and like trying to pull Verena together to get her out on stage,
Mm-hmm.
and yet trying to take care of her and do this. And she's frantic because it is like she's trying to hold on to her. She's trying to possess her and she's trying to win her because she's in love with her, but also because she needs her, because
Right.
she knows that she lacks that star quality that is going to win people to her cause. And then when she realizes that Verena leaves and she goes out and she's like, no, no, I'll try to go out there. And you're like, you are going to get crucified. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But she does it anyway. And you're kind of like, good for you for trying. You're going to fail, but like, good for you for getting out there.
Yeah.
Because you do believe she is passionate about this, because she's Vanessa Redgrave and we know how passionate she is about causes in real life, which also in Julia really made her and Jane Fonda, because they're very similar.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Those two.
Right. What a combo. Um,
Yes.
the scenes that I enjoy is those reaction moments, like when she is disappointed at the dinner table that one time when like the men are trying to get Verena to speak, to like perform her lectures or whatever, because she kind of thinks that Verena is being used for ulterior motives by these
Hmm.
men. And we eventually see them sitting in a bed together late at night, and Verena's kind of like reaffirming that she's not going to marry as Olive requested. And it's interesting how Olive is just like very quick to note that she shouldn't do this just because Olive says she shouldn't, but that it should be because she herself doesn't want to get married so that she could keep
Hmm.
her independence. And I feel like there's some ambiguity with how Vanessa plays it, where like, is she conscious of what she's doing? And like,
Hmm.
does she realize that what she's doing is sort of negatively impacting this woman's free will, basically, like trying to control
Yeah.
her? So I do like that she doesn't revel in like the machinations too much of what she's doing, because it's not that kind of movie. It's not Dangerous Liaisons. um,
Yes.
that does make this
Another
film
movie
a
that I
lot
wish
less
was not
fun,
here. I
but
wish
yeah.
that's going to be such a good year for you. Oh my gosh.
Yes, it
Like,
is.
I'm excited on your behalf for some of the lineup you have coming up. Like, oh,
I
Kevin,
know.
you've waited your whole life for this.
It's been building up to it. Yeah.
But also, when the one line that I really love is when Verena comes in and is like, oh, so if I marry him, I'm going to have to absolutely never speak again. I'm not going to be able to do anything. And she's just
Yeah.
like, he asked you to do that. And just in that one, those few words, you see she's completely shattered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this man is trying to crush her soul. And then in a way, she's sort of crushing her soul, because this woman clearly wants to be with Christopher Reeve. I really felt for that character. As terrible as that actress was in that performance, I still felt for the character, because she was just like, I can't be with you. And at no point was it, I don't want to marry you. It would destroy this other person if I did.
Yeah.
She wouldn't be able to handle it. She would be crushed.
Yeah. So
And you're like,
yeah,
lady, you should just move out on your own. Like, buy a farmhouse.
that's what makes it such an interesting dynamics going on here. I just wish the execution was better overall.
Mm-hmm.
Again, James Ivory would get better as the years would go on with this kind of material, but here as presented, it just feels kind of dry on the whole. So
Extremely dry. And you're
yeah.
wondering again, and even as far as Henry James goes, it's not one of the
Mm.
great Henry James novels. But again, the machinations of people for a young woman's soul, it's literally the plot of every single one of his novels.
Yeah. Again, another movie I don't love, but Vanessa Redgrave is doing what she can with it, with a very, very tricky role that I think she doesn't try to go for audience sympathy in a way that I think is admirable.
Noble. Yeah.
So I like that aspect of it, and she does have a great ending. So solid work from Vanessa Redgrave. I don't really have too much else unless you do.
I'm surprised we talked about this movie as much as we did.
Yeah, we did a good job. um, okay, well, let's move on to our final losing nominee here, Sissy Spacek in The River. So here we have Sissy Spacek getting her 4th Oscar nomination. She's now in this pattern of getting a nomination every 2 years, outside of her first nomination for Carrie, because Coal Miner's Daughter is 1980, Missing is 1982, and now here we have The River in 1984. And we actually have another one to come in 1986 with Crimes of the Heart. But The River is the second of our 3 Save the Farm movies. I actually read that Jessica Lange was in the mix for this role, ironically, but she said something to the effect of like the script not being the kind of story she wanted to tell. But for Sissy, the director Mark Rydell had seen Coal Miner's Daughter, like most people in the early 80s, and thought she would be perfect for this role. Exactly, yes. And he has this quote, actually, where he said, "She is the consummate American rural young woman with strength and fiber and a luminous quality," which I would agree with. So I understand the casting here. The River is about a family of farmers in Tennessee. Sissy stars as May, and Mel Gibson plays her husband, Tom. Like with Country, they have kids who help around the farm, and their farm happens to be very, very dangerously close to a river, which they've had
Hence
multiple...
the title.
Yes, the titular role, which they've had many issues with flooding in the past and present. Meanwhile, there's this local business owner, Joe Wade, played by Scott Glenn, who wants to buy up all the properties along the river, including May and Tom's, to maybe build a dam. And Tom does not want to give up the farm because his family, it's, classic story. And they are facing financial difficulties, of course, so he takes a job at a steel mill and comes to discover that he's actually a strikebreaker who is scabbing while the regular workers are on strike. And in the meantime, May is just kind of attending to the duties around the farm, and that's about it. So let's talk Sissy Spacek here. Amy, thoughts on Sissy here and her take on this Save the Farm subgenre?
Sissy Spacek is another one of these, and all of these actresses, here's the thing, all of these actresses are capital G great actresses who have time and time and time again proven that they are worthy of the acclaim that they have, all of them. Sissy Spacek, from even in movies that I don't personally love, Badlands, she's incredible, and she does have that luminous quality. Yet you believe her as an actual person on screen because she's got that kind of face that you can make up and just do a lot with. This movie is not one of her better films, and it is definitely, it is a role that is unworthy of her talents, because by the end of the movie I felt like, was she even really in this movie? Because she's not in very much of it. And you have Sissy Spacek. And the other hard thing to remember is when I watched this movie, I thought, that's right. There was a time when we were allowed to like Mel Gibson, and he was a likable guy. But even in this, I really think it's his story.
It is.
And that is not to say that she's not wonderful, and she does the job to the best of her abilities. But it is not Coal Miner's Daughter. It is not Carrie. It is not Badlands. It is not In the Bedroom.
No.
And it's such a waste of her talents. At the end of the movie, I asked my friend who I was watching it with through the whole movie again. We were like, oh no, Miss Sissy Spacek is going to save this farm because she is Sissy Spacek, and that is what she's going to do. Because she's another fiery, strong woman. Maybe her Oscar moment was when her arm was stuck in the combine.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
She makes a tourniquet with her teeth. I don't know how. She can talk to animals. She gets the bull to come over to her and get the thing off of her. And that was an incredible scene. The scene where she's with her enemy / former lover added a little depth to the character. But it's another one. This movie is not worthy of her. And therefore, and I'm being completely honest, I'm shocked that she was nominated for not only an Oscar, but for a Golden Globe also. It's just such a nothing role. And it's so disappointed because I was ready to see some Sissy Spacek. But I do like at the end when she's pulling the sandbags up and she's helping build the dam. And she showed strength in those moments, but wow, there's a not much going on in this movie for her.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the weakest of the three Save the Farm movies here, personally.
100.
I think it's a little too pretty. It's a little too like sentimental for me in a very it feels very Hollywood trying to make a film about common folk for me, and that's not a positive in case you couldn't
Yeah,
tell. Um as always, really enjoy the sort of warmth of Sissy Spacek and her screen presence and just that naturalism that she has. It feels like even though she's like had her big Cinderella Oscar moment, she hasn't totally lost herself in like the fame of everything. And you can very easily see why she would be a top choice for a role like this. But I also think if this same performance and movie came out in 1983 or 1985, she does not get nominated for it. I think it's totally fine. Sissy Spacek performance. She's humble, she's sensitive, she gets two or three solid moments, but I just don't find this to be all that noteworthy, if I'm being honest. Like, which is not to say it's a
agreed.
bad performance, but other than those two or three moments, I just don't think the film gives her very much to do, like you said. It really feels like the Mel Gibson show, who I think is also not very well cast here, if I'm being honest, there
No,
too.
no.
Um, I get that he's like hot and it's the 80s and he's that in that leading man status, but pretty unconvincing.
You could have used Sam Shepard in this movie. That would have been better.
Yeah, I think so. Or Christopher Reeve.
Or Christopher Reeve.
Honestly, you'd be better fit here than in the Bostonians.
What
But
were they thinking?
yeah, it's wild. So she's kind of just relegated to being the traditional wife mother character.
Hmm.
And I feel like the material she does get feels like padding, and that the
Yeah,
film is actually not really that interested in her. Like, there's
no.
so much that Mel Gibson gets to do. Even Scott Glenn gets more to do than she does with having this
He's a much
conflict
more
between them.
interesting character.
Yeah.
You didn't have
So,
to put that they had a relationship before in there at all.
yeah, like I said, it feels like they're trying to give Sissy something to do because they forgot to write an arc for her character when they got to the
Exactly. You
first
don't
draft.
see, and unlike Jessica Lange, you don't get to see really any great mom moments, any great townsperson moments,
Yeah.
any great marriage scenes. Very disappointing. And again, this doesn't speak on her talent, but if you're mentioning teaching someone about Sissy Spacek, this is not one of those you have to see this movie. Like
Yeah.
Badlands, absolutely. Carrie, absolutely. Coal miner's daughter in the bedroom, but this is like what?
Sometimes when you're hot, you're hot. And they're just gonna, if Sissy Spacek's got a movie and it's the 80s, it's gonna be on some short lists automatically. And that's kind of how this feels. I think she does do solid, obviously quiet internal work because that's all she really gets for a lot of the film, with like Wade driving her back from the market and asking her about like whether they're going to sell the property. And she very tellingly says, Tom is not interested in selling. And he asks, like, well, how do you feel about it? And then there's just silence, which I think she's able to really show in this, again, very quiet way that she probably feels differently. In fact, we know that she feels differently, but
Hmm.
she is also going to sort of stand by her man. And it's like she understands the nuances of that without having to say anything,
Hmm.
her as a character and Sissy Spacek. And so even though there really is so little for her to do compared to the men in the movie, I do think she makes the most of like what she has without sacrificing the sort of quiet, humble nature of her character. Like, this is an ordinary farmer's wife at the end of the day. She's not some extraordinary woman. And I think if she were to do more than that, if she were to do like plate smashing against the
Yeah,
wall, it would probably betray the character a little. And so it's just not
totally.
an interesting character, I think, is what I'm quibbling with here.
No, that actress did the best she could with the absolute crumbs that she was given.
Yeah.
But she does
Um,
such a lovely face. I know that
she
might be
does.
off
So
topic,
expressive.
but so expressive and so pretty and
The
glowy.
eyes. Yeah.
Yes, those eyes and that pointy
hmm
nose.
to revisit the tractor moment, because that seems like that's the most memorable moment for her. Wild stuff. She's losing blood, and it's just this big mess. And just like her gradually becoming weaker and weaker and more desperate and trying to get out of this thing and like antagonizing this bull to get her to hit the tractor. Yeah, pretty gnarly stuff there, but I think some solid physical acting that we don't always get from Sissy
Yes.
Spacek, maybe. So
That's the scene where I was like, everyone thinks living on a farm, especially because I'm from the Northeast and so are you,
yeah.
that people just think of charming farmhouses. And that's what it means to, and maybe having a couple orchards in the yard and you pick apples and you're a farmer. It's like, no, farming is no joke.
No,
Those
exactly.
machines are big and dangerous and scary. And that not only that, once she gets out of it, you see her driving the tractor back home and
I know.
what? This woman practically lost an arm and she's still driving a tractor. That's what it means to be a farmer's wife, not just
I
like,
guess so. Yeah.
let's pick some apples and make pies.
Right, some romanticized version of that, right?
But I will say, the person I watched it with is from that area of the
Mhm.
country, and he was like, all of the things with the town felt very real with the John Deere hats and
Sure, yeah.
the brands and everything. Like the local people seemed very local, and I
Yeah.
liked that.
Yeah,
That is nothing
definitely.
to do with performance. It's a nothing performance. I'm embarrassed that she had to do it, but good for her
Yeah,
for doing it and getting award.
I guess
And
so.
getting
Yeah. Obviously, the scene where Wade tries to seduce her again when Tom is away and her dismissing him again. I think you can see her being kind of torn up about the whole thing, and she kind of like is covering her mouth when he keeps going on and on and on about it, and she just quietly tells him to go home. I love how she chooses, again, not to make it this big over the top scene of her rejecting him. She just has this expression that's just like, we each chose different partners. We have to live with our choices. That's that. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
I have nothing else.
I just really think that the film betrays her ultimately and is not worthy of her talent, like you said.
No. And she, like I said, she is one of the greats, as is Jessica Lange and Vanessa Redgrave and Judy Davis.
Judy Davis.
But these roles, ugh.
Yeah, I know. It's disappointing, honestly.
It really is.
But
we would have been okay without some of these films being made, and I very rarely say that. But Bostonians. But if that's what they needed to make A Room with a View, and then later Howard's End, then good for them. If that needed to be made first for them to find out about casting and things,
right,
work out the kinks.
Well, shall we move on to our winner?
We shall.
Okay. So, Sally Field in Places in the Heart, excuse me. My goodness. So, I was thinking of Crimes of the Heart. Places in the Heart. Anyway.
They're all the same movie.
Right, yeah. So, as we know, an Oscar winner relatively recently at this time for Norma Rae. She dabbles in a few different genres after that win. She does a sequel to Smokey and the Bandit. She's in Absence of Malice with Paul Newman. She's in Kiss Me Goodbye. And then she gets this role in Places in the Heart, working with Robert Benton, who also directed Kramer vs. Kramer in that same year of Norma Rae. And here she is winning her second Oscar in 6 years. So Places in the Heart is our third and final Save the Farm movie, arguably saving the best for last. We'll talk about it. But this one is actually a period piece set in the 30s in Texas during the Great Depression, and it centers on Edna, played by Sally Field, whose husband is accidentally shot and killed, leaving Edna to attend to all the parenting duties plus running the farm. She gets help from a drifter, Moses, a black man, and raising eyebrows in the process because this is a very segregated society, and he helps around the farm. Then she's told by the bank that her husband owed money that she doesn't have, and so she's advised to sell the farm, but she decides to tough it out and work to keep it. She also gets help from the banker advisor's brother-in-law, Mr. Will, who's blind, and he helps with Edna's kids. So they have a kind of motley crew situation as she tries to save her farm and finds this community in the process. All right, so let's talk Sally. Amy, thoughts on the great and wonderful Sally Field and her second Oscar-winning performance here?
She is another capital G great.
Great.
She's one of those, literally every movie she is in, she's incredible. There's nothing this woman cannot do. But she is another one of those actresses that you could describe her by the title of one of her films. She is a steel magnolia.
Yeah.
That she definitely can play the soft, the sweet, the feminine. She's a great mother. She's done very excellent work playing mothers. And yet, all of the performances as a mother are all different. They're all different.
Yeah.
They're all unique. They're all totally nuanced. She pulls it off every single time, and she pulls it off every single time absolutely perfect. Like, no notes on every performance she's in. No notes. She's just mwah, chef's kiss. This is definitely the best of the farm movies.
Yeah.
Okay. And it also is a role worthy of Sally Field. I'm not a huge fan of the movie in general, because I do think of it a lot as a Hallmark type film. However, they gave her so much depth to work with, that again, that sweet, that feminine. When her husband gets killed at the beginning, it's awful and it's shocking. And I just remember this one scene when they bring the body of the kid, and they're like, oh, let's bring her out to show her the body of the kid. I was like, what? Why would she want to see this? But she's very polite, even when you can tell she's a little afraid. When Danny Glover first shows up, and she's tentative, but she's very sweet and polite, but very like, you stay out there, and I'll bring you something, and then you can go on your way. But she still has that kindness that she's not going to let a stranger go by, as uncomfortable and nervous as she is. And I love her, what I will call her Jean Valjean moment, when the cop comes. It's literally a Jean Valjean moment. Comes back, and he's got the spoons, and she's like, oh, I gave them to him to bring somewhere else. And I was like,
right.
Les Mis, is that where we are? But that she has those fiery moments. And again, no, we are going to save the farm. What do we need to do it? Because we're going to do it. We need to hire more people. Is that what you're saying that we need to do? Awesome. We are not giving up. That's not an option. It is going to happen. And I love that. And I love the growing relationship with her and Danny Glover. I love the relationship with her and the great John Malkovich. Speaking of Danny Glover, how has he never been nominated for an Oscar? What?
Yeah, I know.
Excuse me?
I know. He has The Color Purple next year and still not nominated.
And Claus Maria Brandauer from Out of Africa was?
Ugh, yeah.
Sorry.
Out of Africa next week. Oh,
yeah. but like I said, particularly Claus Maria Brandauer for Blixen, and not Danny Glover for tearing up that screen. Excuse me, Academy. What are we even thinking about here? Okay.
I know.
Back on track. I have a lot of opinions on 80s movies, but it's worthy of her. She's magnificent. And this is Sally Field at her absolute best. I definitely have reasons why I think she won, but I will save that for later. But okay. I can't say anymore. She's amazing and she's perfect. And this is one of those, if you're going to see a Sally Fields movie, this should definitely be on your list.
Well, I think this is a good performance from Sally. I think she has such a warm spirit that she feels so comfortable in this role. She also has the right kind of like innocence and naivete, and also that great scrappiness. She's such a great underdog that you always want to root for, where it's kind of impossible not to like her in this role. For me, I wouldn't say that this is calling to be an Oscar winner necessarily, but none of them here are, so what does that really mean? But
I agree.
She's putting in pretty good work here as the kind of de facto lead of an ensemble film, which this ends up being. So it's not, for me, the kind of tour de force that she gives in Norma Rae, where she's so in command of that film from the first minute and never lets up. But she suits this story really well. You know, in the beginning, we see her as that humble housewife and just happy with her life in that role. And then the film takes that very quick turn with her husband being shot, and the whole reacting in scenes like that is like either you go over the top with it or you underplay it with the shock of it. And I think she rides the line there between those two things. It looks like the wind is knocked out of her. And the way she goes so soft-spoken when she's like looking at her husband's body and saying she never knew till now that he had a scar at a certain point in his body. It's tough because we barely know this woman by this early part in the movie, but she plays it with so much grace and with sensitivity without making it feel sentimental and maudlin and hallmarky that the rest of the movie kind of is.
There's a lot of Mrs. Gump in this character. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, there's definitely shades to come as far as Gump is that kind of mama.
Yeah, and I think the connection she has with Danny Glover's character, Moses, is obviously noteworthy because this is 1935, it's the South, racial tensions are at a high, and she is a little bit dismissive of him at first, but mostly because she can't afford to pay him anything for work around the house. Mm-hmm. And I think she does have this innocence and a purity in her spirit that she's not going to be like openly antagonistic to him in the way that so many of the other white people in town are. So I think there's this warmth in her face and in her body language that shows that she is a good person at heart, and it doesn't feel fake,
No.
But that she also does have those moments of like shooting it straight with that classic Sally Field spunkiness when she's telling him, like, if I ever catch you stealing anything, I'll shoot you myself. Like that sort of line she just carries so beautifully.
After the Jean Valjean moment.
Right, exactly. And you see her throughout the film having to kind of make these concessions so that she can get by, like welcoming in the John Malkovich character, the brother-in-law of the banker guy who's like threatening her with possibly losing her farm, and she may not like having to become this sort of like den mother to these men like Malkovich or Danny Glover, but like what other choice does she have? So she just kind of goes with it, and she makes the choice to be welcoming, and I think that just comes very naturally to her screen persona.
Oh, definitely.
So I think it's a role that really just kind of fits her like a glove. There are moments where I wonder how much work is needed for her. Like, how much stretching does she do necessarily to pull this off?
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's hard for me to judge, like, if that's, like, impressive what she's doing.
Especially from today's perspective when we've seen her do so many other things.
Yeah. So that's why I'm not, like, totally in love with the performance, even though I think it's some good stuff. Obviously, we love Sally Fields.
It's not Norma Ray.
It's not Norma Ray. Exactly.
When she gets up on that table and holds up that Union sign, who doesn't cheer?
That's the Sally I love. Yes. Yeah. What are some of the bigger moments towards the middle to end that stand out for you from her?
When they finally get that bale of cotton, that celebratory moment, and when she is like, okay, we're gonna have to hire people. Okay, then we'll do it. Okay, but what if we don't? And she's like, well, then I'll pay them out of the, you know what I mean? And it's just, she's not backing down. And that's really when she kind of comes alive, when she's coming up with that plan. And when she really starts to connect with Mr. Will. Because at first, when he talks about her awful children, she's like, screw you, my kids are great. But yeah, those are the moments of triumph and her feistiness, and okay, well, we'll get it. And she's picking the cotton, and she's just, you can tell that she's never done this kind of hard labor before, but she's going to keep fighting. She reminded me a little of Vivian Leigh as Scarlett O'Hara when she's picking that cotton, and I'm not used to it, but so help me God, I'm going to keep my land. Yeah,
that's the great sort of zoom in close up of her face there, of just being like, how did I end up here? Kind of is like what she's communicating there.
And when she doesn't, because at the beginning they establish very clearly, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anything. I don't know how much money we have. But going from a life with a husband who's a police officer during the Depression, she, that was a pretty big house. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, I actually have to pick this cotton, and that's really hard work. But she does it because she's Miss Sally Field. She's going to save that farm.
Yeah, I think in that scene of her picking cotton, we also get like a flashback of her dancing with her husband.
Yes.
I think that that's a nice scene, but I also feel like it's a little bit hand-holding of the audience a little bit to be like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I already knew that she is feeling a lot of emotion in this moment of like, how did I get here? I don't know if I
Hmm.
need to see like a glimpse of her husband again to like, I just wish that they trusted her more to communicate that to the audience. I don't know. That's just kind of
The husband was
nitpicking,
a
but
plot device.
yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And I do really like the scene where she's very carefully negotiating with the buyer of the cotton. I think that's a scene where it's kind of like she's doing solid work at first glance if you're not thinking about it. But like when you actually stop and realize the evolution of this character and how she is still having like that trepidation of being way over her head, but she's
Hmm.
also learned this good business sense and she's like appealing to his emotion. She's putting in this really nice, sensitive, nuanced work that, again, you wouldn't notice on a first glance, but like if you're watching the film in context, you're like, wow, she's really grown and she's handling herself out in the world. Even though that
Yeah.
sounds very like infantilizing of this woman, but like she didn't have a lot at the beginning of the film, and now she knows what she's doing.
And that's kind of what the expectation for Southern women was. Like, you know how to cook,
Yeah,
you know how to be soft, you know how to serve your man, but
yeah.
that's it. That was your use.
Yeah. So it's a good, solid arc. I do
Hmm.
also like when she describes what she looks like to Mr. Will at the dinner table. That's a really nice, understated scene for her of just opening up and talking about her life. And
Hmm.
it's like she so rarely has been able to just stop down and been able to do that in her life. I love when she just kind of calls herself No Real Beauty because she's so humble, but she just
Hmm.
seems so touched that he's taking that interest in her in that way. So I don't
That's
know.
right.
Those are the nice, really lovely moments there that I really enjoy, those slice of life scenes. So it's a good performance in a movie that I don't always care for necessarily. I think the subplot with Ed Harris and Amy Madigan can be thrown
Why?
out completely.
Yeah,
So
why? And
yeah,
it's another Hallmark movie.
yeah, it really, that part of it is what makes it feel hallmarky.
Yeah,
Um, do you have anything else on Sally before we get to the Oscar race here?
I do not.
Okay. Alrighty, let's get to this Oscar race. So, for precursors, Sally Field won the Golden Globe for drama, where she was nominated alongside most of this competition, including Jessica Lange, Vanessa Redgrave, and Sissy Spacek. Vanessa Redgrave was a real critics' favorite. She won the National Society of Film Critics Award. She was a nominee with New York Film Critics and Los Angeles Film Critics. Judy Davis won with the Boston Film Critics, but she actually didn't show up anywhere else. So that's interesting. It feels like a weird sort of precursor year where there wasn't really a steamroll kind of
Yeah.
obvious winner necessarily, other than Sally Field winning the Golden Globe, but that was kind of it. So, having said that, Amy, why do we think Sally Field was our winner from this group?
That is a good question that has been tormenting me. This is not an easy year to do this with.
No, it is not.
I would say it is. I feel like, first of all, no one watched the Bostonians. So we'll start with that.
Correct.
And I think Judy Davis at the time was kind of an unknown, even though probably more people saw that than some of the other movies. And I think
Yeah, it got
out of,
11 nominations, so
yeah, exactly.
certainly.
And it was very widely seen, but it wasn't because of her. It was because it was a David Lean epic on a very, very
Yeah.
famous movie, a famous book. But I would say that out of the Saving Your Farm movies, it's the best Saving the Farm movie. And I would say she's featured the most in that movie. I think for me, you saw it as an ensemble. I see it as more like that's definitely a Sally Field festival. And it's a feel good, it's a movie that makes you happy. It's not quite as depressing as some of the other ones, but it's very down home. It's a period piece. It's about the Great Depression. People love those things. And there's
Hmm.
the spiritual element underneath it. And I think it made a lot of people feel happy. And that was a way to reward that film, that sentimental feeling.
Yeah. I
that
think
I
that's
didn't
right.
get with Country. And this is, I think Jessica Lange was phenomenal, but I definitely didn't get that sentimental feeling watching Country or The River.
Yeah, definitely not.
Sissy Spacek, where were you in your film? Like, what?
Yeah, I think she was really well liked. Obviously, she was Places in the Heart was also a Best Picture nominee. None of the others were outside of Passage to India. You know, it made money. That helps. It was clearly the chosen one among the farm movies. Neither Country or The River did well financially by any means. And also, The River wasn't even well liked critically. So, like, its nominations here and other categories are just like a mystery to me. But anyway, yeah, I think Vanessa Redgrave was certainly different from the rest in some sense to maybe have had a shot, but her reputation made it very unlikely, and the fact that nobody saw the movie didn't help either.
Yeah, I
um
think they wanted to get her back up on stage winning an award again. But people nowadays still really like Places in the Heart. I mentioned, I talked to my friends and they're like, "Oh, I remember that movie." No one remembers The River or Country. I'd never
no.
heard of it. I've
Yeah.
heard of movies. Like, I'm kind of educated in movies. I've never.
Yeah. And then with Judy Davis, she was the only one here without an Oscar, so that has to count for something. But I do maintain personally that she is not fully the lead of her movie, which makes it difficult, I think. And I do think it's maybe clear based on the overall reception to A Passage to India that it was respected to get the nominations, but not quite enough for the bigger wins outside of obviously Peggy Ashcroft and the score. It just didn't seem like the kind of reception that would lead to like 2 acting wins, I guess. So I do
Yeah,
think Sally Field kind of won by a healthy margin, I would guess. She has such a likable
yeah.
character. And like I said before, it's so hard to not want to root for her. I just feel like she has so much in her favor.
It's not one of the best actress wins.
No, it's not.
It's very mid, especially with Shirley MacLaine. Didn't Shirley MacLaine win the year before? Which
Yes, yes.
that I mean, you go from a tour de force performance, and it's hard because that year, 1984, there were great movies out that year. We just didn't get to watch any of them.
I know.
Like, I don't even know. Honestly, I don't know how Peggy Ashcroft won. Really?
I
I
think she's
don't.
good. I think she
She's
has a nice
good.
presence. Yeah.
She's good, and she has a good presence, but it's not. I don't know. I just buy these movies.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this was the year of Amadeus.
yeah.
That
I mean,
movie's
that completely
amazing.
dominated every other category.
Of
So,
course it did.
yeah. But anyway, of course, we do have to talk about the iconic Best Actress moment here, which is her very effusive speech where she says, "I can't deny the fact that you like me. Right now, you like me." Memes to
History was
come
made.
for that.
And
Yes.
it's sad that people remember that speech probably more than her performance in the movie. Let's be real.
That is correct. Yes. And like I was telling you before, an often misquoted speech, because people always say that you like me, you really like me, when that is
Mm-hmm.
not actually what she said. She said it in a commercial at one point, and that is kind of, I think, what spawned that, like,
And good for her. Good
Mandela
for
effect. But anyway, she did say backstage, very insightful comment where she said, "When I won for Norma Ray, all I could think about was that I was going to fall down. I'm going to humiliate myself. My
Oh.
emotional life was blocked by this ridiculous don't look like a jerk feeling."
Oh.
And so this one was just like this kind of like affirmation for her of being like, you really have made it, kid. Like you really did
Oh.
this, you know?
Sweet.
Yeah, and she was also asked to like explain her appeal, which is like a very strange question to ask someone, but she that's the press.
I
But
hate
she actually
people.
she had a very interesting response where she said, "I think on some level I must be monumentally unsophisticated. There must be something very ordinary about me. I look like a lot of people you might have grown up with,"
True.
which I think is fair.
I think it's extremely true and very self-aware.
Right. At that age, I don't know how old she was by this point, but still late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I don't have that kind of insight about myself. So good for you, Sally Field.
I'm an old woman. I
Um,
know.
well, there you have it. So Yeah, I know it's going to be interesting to have the discussion later on about who the runner-up might have been, because I genuinely think it could have been any of them, and I would not be shocked.
Yeah. And
So,
I analyzed, I looked at
me too.
stats.
I
I
overanalyzed.
still
So,
like, who the heck?
who knows? Yeah. Yeah. Shall we get to some Twitter questions?
Yes.
Let's start off with Christoph here, who said, seriously, is this the batch of nominated films that is hardest to sit through from my Best Actress years? Pretty tough, not gonna lie. I don't think any of these movies I would want to revisit again, to be honest. I'm trying to think if there's another year that was like that for me, where like even the person I would rank at number one was just like not really all that for me. I would say 1963 comes close. The Patricia Neal win is probably a tough one. So
I will say, had you asked me at the beginning what is my least favorite actress win, I could do an entire episode on Patricia Neal is the worst Best Actress winner of all time.
well, because she's not even leading her film on
She's
top of
not,
everything
and
else. But yeah,
she's okay, but also that character nowadays she wouldn't have gotten cast because the character is a woman of color.
yeah, that's
So that,
also true.
I'm also not
Yeah.
a big Patricia Neal person in general, so there's
Okay.
also
Uh,
1963 was a rough year all the way around.
not good at all. Morgan said Sally gives one of the most memorable Best Actress speeches with "You like me, you really like me." Not what she actually said. Anyway, what is your favorite, most memorable Best Actress speech?
One that I will say really stands out for me is Nicole Kidman when she won for The Hours.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, she looked absolutely stunning. And
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman is one of those actresses. I feel like she won for the wrong film, but Nicole Kidman is one of my absolute favorites. It's just you look at her filmography, it's ridiculous. But I remember her giving a speech, and I don't know if I can do it and not try to do the accent, but she said some people ask with everything that's going on in the world, why do movies and why does it matter? And she goes, it matters because art is important. And I
Yeah.
just remember that. And it was just so heartfelt, and it just really stands out to me that art is important, and movies reflect society. It reflects what's going on. It reflects the values of our times. And it's an art form that takes on so much. It's such a richness of talent that goes into making a film. And I love her for saying that and for saying it is important. Movies and films are important.
That's a really, really good one. I hadn't thought about that one in a while. I might have to rewatch that speech after this. I really love Marion Cotillard's speech. I think that is exactly what you want in a Best Actress speech. She's genuinely surprised to win. She's like breathless getting up there. And I was personally invested in her winning that year. And the speech
Aww.
itself, where she says, like, there are angels in this city, is just something I've never forgotten.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's Olivia Colman. She has a fantastic speech, one for the ages. But yeah, there's a lot of them.
Oh, and I would say Frances McDormand when she won and
Yes, for Three
talked about,
Billboards.
and she put her Oscar down. She's like, now I'm going to tell you some stuff. And she
Yes.
talked about inclusion rosters.
Yeah, inclusion writers.
And
Yeah.
people like me ran to the internet and Googled inclusion
Yeah.
writers.
Yeah.
And I love Frances McDormand and
And she made impact after that speech.
But that,
Yeah.
and she did, because she's Frances freaking McDormand, and that is what she's gonna do. But like I said, that Nicole Kidman, art is important.
Wow.
I just,
That was good. Yeah.
it was a little good. I watched it a few times.
I'm sure.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Fritz said, which other Best Actress winner would you have liked to see accept her award with a "You Like Me" speech?
Ooh, maybe, and not because I love this performance, but maybe Ingrid Bergman when she won again after being like ousted from
Yeah.
Hollywood. Like when
Yeah.
she came
It's a good
back,
one.
that might have been appropriate, even though I totally would take that win away from her.
Yeah. Or she could have done it on her third win for Murder on the Orient Express to be like, damn, you really like me.
Yes.
Because that is not like an Oscar-worthy win, per se.
Yeah.
But anyway, It would actually be very funny if Frances McDormand did that on her like third Best Actress win, but in like a more sarcastic Frances McDormand way. I could
Yes,
also see someone like Kate Winslet doing that, even though that's only her first.
because she's still she in my heart, she's never as valued as much as she should be. Like, I
Yeah.
think we should just be throwing awards at Kate Winslet all the
And she
time.
would gladly take them because she loves awards.
She does.
um,
And you know what?
and we love that.
When you have the talent to back it up, I say go for it. If people are like she has a huge
Yeah.
ego, she can because she's Kate Winslet and she always gives it.
Bingo.
And she always serves. Oh, she's one of my favorites.
Yes. Jeremy Kaplan said, Sally Field's You Like Me acceptance speech was quirky, quotable, and somewhat silly. But why do you think it has had such an enormous staying power, appearing constantly in Oscar montages and haunting Field for the rest of her career?
I guess it just was such a quirky moment, and it's such an odd thing to say. It's just it's so bizarre that she said that. I guess that's
Yeah.
what it is for me. And she's so likable that if someone else had said it, you'd be like, "Wow, you're super arrogant," and it would be a big turnoff. But
Yeah.
because it's Sally Field, it was charming.
I think it's just how over the top it is and how genuine she is with saying
Hmm.
it. I just think I'm just going to put this out there. I think people get a little weird about it when people show that much enthusiasm and are genuinely happy, especially for something that some others would not deem as serious as, winning an Oscar.
Hmm.
Just saying. I think people are too cynical about things like that.
And didn't Shirley MacLaine the year before say like, "I deserved
I
this"?
deserve this. Thank you. Yes.
And how much do you love her for saying that? Like,
I adore her for saying that because
I
she's
just,
right.
but that's what I want. I know that's what I want. Like,
Yeah.
I deserve this.
Yes.
And she should have said that in 1960 for The Apartment, but that's a whole nother
Agree with that too. The ghost of Glenda Miss Jackson if you nasty says. The ghost of Glenda Miss Jackson if you nasty, not Glenda Miss Jackson if you nasty. But do you think the Academy liked Sally Field? Haven't heard anyone suggest such a thing. Very funny. Yes, we can't deny the fact that they liked her. I wish they liked her even more to actually nominate her more than one other time for Lincoln. We will
Yeah,
get to some others very shortly that she
I
should have
don't
been
know.
nominated for.
I don't know how she wasn't nominated for Forrest Gump.
Genuinely baffling.
94 was a great year, but that, and I don't remember the supporting actresses from that year. That was a weak year for actresses. Great year for supporting actor, great year for actor.
Yeah.
Meh for actresses. I guess sometimes it just happens that way, but
Yeah.
the fact that she wasn't nominated, she had to have been the sixth person because
I would think so. My God.
Shocking that she didn't get nominated for that.
Very strange. Amar said, if you do a ranking of the winners that you covered in your podcast so far, where would you put Field's underwhelming performance? Well, now we know how Amar feels. As of now, I have 60 films ranked in my Best Actress ranking because of the tie, and also because there were 3 films for Janet Gaynor that she won for. So out of the 60, I have her at number 47. Which is much lower than other 80s winners that I've talked about so far. Yeah, it's just fine. It's good, solid work.
I would agree with you. I mean, I know the question was not directed at me, but I agree with you. It's especially in the 80s. The 80s, you have iconic win, iconic win, iconic win, iconic win.
Exactly.
And major losses that we're still not completely over, if we're going to be honest.
No,
that on the daily, I'm tortured by some of these wins and losses. But yeah, even for the 80s, it's close to the bottom.
All right, here we go. Adam said, given this is Sally Field's last lead nomination, what else would you have wanted to see her nominated for? Amy has the list.
Soap Dish. I freaking love that movie. And I think it's one of her best roles because man, is she funny. She is funny, and the way that she does those soap opera scenes is such a hoot, and how over the top she is outside of her acting in that. It's probably, honestly, I will go on the record that it's my favorite Sally Field performance.
Wow.
I love it.
Steel Magnolias, of course.
Oh,
I have.
how was she not nominated for that?
I don't understand why she didn't get in for Steel Magnolias. I would have loved to have seen her get nominated for Hello, My Name is Doris, which was a more recent one. I know this isn't lead, but again, Forrest Gump. Say what you want about that movie. I think she's incredible in that. She has, yeah, I mean, I don't understand why she doesn't have like 6 or 7 nominations. She only has
Shocking.
3.
And she has, and especially Steel Magnolias, she has an Oscar-winning monologue in that movie.
Literally, it was like written for an Oscar nomination.
It really was. It always hits. Just like, where was the supporting actress nomination for Shirley MacLaine and Olympia Dukakis for that movie?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the only one was Julia Roberts, right?
And I think she's the most impressive actress in that film. She was good.
Yeah.
I would have given Dolly Parton a supporting actress nom. That's a SAG winning ensemble cast.
That's 100% winning SAG. Yes.
Because that's the best actresses at their best. That is Shirley MacLaine at her best. That is Olympia Dukakis at her best. That is Dolly Parton. All of these women that I love more than life itself at their peak.
Lila said Sally Field played a lot of iconic moms in her career, but which is the definitive mother?
Forrest Gump. Just over Malin from Steel Magnolias. But my son is going to have the same opportunities as everybody else.
I think for me it is Steel Magnolias, but yeah, between those two, I think she is such a, you want her to be your mom.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. And I absolutely believe that she would give her kid a kidney. Absolutely. And she would have given Forrest Gump a kidney if he needed it.
Andrew Carden said, rank the Ednas. Greer Garson as Edna Gladney in Blossoms in the Dust, Ellen Burstyn as Edna May Harper McCulley in Resurrection, and Sally Field as Edna Spaulding in Places in the Heart. What a specific question, Andrew. Places in the Heart, number 1 for me, believe it or not. And then Resurrection, number 2, Ellen Burstyn. And then Greer Garson last for Blossoms in the Dust.
Greer Garson always last on a list and always last in our heart, right?
I'm sorry. Just how I feel.
I have not seen any of those movies, so
you did see Places in the Heart at least.
Yes,
so.
I tip my hat.
Number 1.
But...
Okay, that's fine. Do not watch Blossoms in the Dust. You'll be bored to tears. Anyway. Miles McHale said A Passage to India is partly based on a play version in which Gladys Cooper was nominated for Best Lead Actress in a Play. In my mind, Peggy Ashcroft is more the standout performance, and Davis kind of rides supporting lead. Should Ashcroft have been bumped up?
In my opinion, no. When I watched that movie, I think she's a supporting role.
I think you can sort of justify either one, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I think the character itself feels like a classic supporting winner, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think she just has a lot of screen time, so it's really tough. She's probably still supporting, but by a hair for me.
Yeah.
So I agonized over that way too much. It's not that serious. Okay, Fritz said Judy Davis in A Passage to India or Sarah Miles in Ryan's Daughter. I don't know if that's or like which performance is better, but
I agonized over this as well.
Oh boy.
Because I'm the one of 4 people that actually likes the movie Ryan's Daughter. I realize it's not Dave Lean's best, but I still think it's entertaining and really good. That's a tough question because there's such different roles.
Yeah.
And I feel like both actresses are worthy of nominations. But I think I'm going to go with a Passage to India because she's the complexity, the constant, you can tell all the machinations in her brain and she's frazzled and nervous the whole time. But that being said, Sarah Miles really runs the gamut. You believe her, you feel sorry for her, even though you see that she's also a flawed character. So it's kind of hard. It's a tough one.
I would go with Judy Davis over Sarah Miles here. I am more impressed, not only in the 2 films, but as actresses. I'm just definitely prefer Judy Davis to Sarah Miles. So not
Yes.
as difficult for me, but Fritz also asked, Peggy Ashcroft won a few lead awards for Passage to India. Could she have triumphed here?
No, I don't.
Probably not. Maybe it would be a little closer between Field and her, because she did have a lot of support. She did win supporting actress, but no, probably not. I think still Sally takes it.
Mm-hmm.
Joey Gentili said, Jessica Lange was robbed here and was a part of the theme of farm women. Why do you think the Academy was obsessed with farming this year?
Honestly, I think Ronald Reagan and America. It was a very patriotic time in our country, and it was a very rah America, which is ironic because as I was watching all of the films with the farmers, you realize that the US government is essentially who they're fighting,
Yeah.
and the Republican government in most of those ways tends to be the ones that are screwing them over and taking over their farms, yet all of these people are still voting Republican.
Yeah.
Good but point. Raw America was a big popular sentiment in 1984, and Reagan had a lot to do with that.
Yeah. And I mean, there was an election that year. He was reelected by like a landslide. So
like the biggest.
Yeah. Maybe it was just it was also just a dark time also. I remember that, not personally, but just in researching, remember there's a lot of darker historical events. The AIDS epidemic is continuing. There's just satanic panic. There's like all kinds of stuff going on.
Kids getting kidnapped. Yeah, it's...
Yeah.
Plus
it was that farming crisis.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, hard pivot. Let's go to Dark Shaka, who said, this was Vanessa Redgrave's last Best Actress nomination. Rank her nominated lead performances. Okay, I would say number 1 would be Isadora. Number 2 would be the Bostonians. Number 3 would be Mary Queen of Scots. And number 4 would be Morgan, which I don't like at all. So when she is good, she is good. And I do think at least 2 of these performances are good. Of the 4 that she was nominated for.
I would be okay if she had never won an Oscar, personally.
And that's fine. You know, it's not like she
I'd be
is
okay
an
with
awful
that.
actress. Right.
Yeah, it's not like some other actresses where it's like, wow, right. Like I'm still not okay that Russell and Barbara Stanwyck haven't won. But like,
yeah, that's unforgivable.
With Vanessa Redgrave, it's like, like Deborah Carr doesn't have an Oscar, but Vanessa Redgrave does. Like, what?
Wow, good point.
Rhymes with star.
There we go. Okay, Sammy Flowers has quite a question. Vanessa Redgrave plays a queer character falling for Madeline Potter. What other 4 actresses of any era would you cast as the queer love interests of the other nominees if that were how they were written?
Okay.
Wow.
I didn't really understand all the nuances of that question if we were supposed to put the nominees. I just came up with the other actresses that I thought would be good.
Yeah.
Okay. For this film, Barbara Stanwyck and Teresa Wright.
Oh my goodness.
Betty Davis and Ann Baxter.
Well, that's okay.
Susan Sarandon and Winona Ryder in the early 90s. And Angela Bassett and a young Halle Berry.
Wow. Interesting.
I don't know if that even answers the question, but I was just trying to think of pairing during certain time periods that I could kind of see. But Teresa Wright just has such a young, sweet purity about her. And I think that she would have had the charisma to play that role.
In the Bostonians.
Yeah, in the Bostonians. And Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I completely interpreted it a different way. So whatever. I think they're asking like pairing the other nominees here with another actress. Possibly, but I'm not positive on that. Either way, that's what I interpret it as. So let's just do that.
I think you're right.
I would pair Sissy Spacek with Jodie Foster as like ranchers. I don't know. Sally Field with Lily Tomlin, because I think they would have a ball together.
Yes.
Jessica Lange with Sarah Paulson. Let's just do that American Horror Story reunion.
Can we do this, please, Hollywood?
And Judy Davis with Cynthia Nixon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They would be very equally yoked. I like that.
Yes. So there you go. Moving on, David Krasner said, had Glenn Close played the lead in The Bostonians, as had been planned before The Natural stole her away, how would that have shifted Best Actress that year?
Honestly, I don't think it would have.
Okay.
I think that movie was going nowhere.
I mean, I think she would have been nominated, I would imagine.
Yes, but I don't think
And
she won.
maybe without the baggage that Redgrave had, she could have had more of a shot of winning.
True.
It is actually a role that reminds me of what she would later do a little bit in Dangerous Liaisons.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite the same, but just like, manipulating behind the scenes and whatnot. I think she's certainly capable of that.
Yes.
But probably would have been another loss for old Glennie, unfortunately.
If she didn't win for freaking Fatal Attraction or Dangerous Liaisons.
Yeah. Preaching to the choir. Dark Shaka said, if both Spacek and Lange had lost in 1980 and 1982 respectively, could any of them beat Sally this year? If so, who?
No, neither of them, especially Spacek.
No, yeah.
I don't think that's why they lost. I don't think that's why they didn't win.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the thinking here. Between the two of them, I guess Jessica Lange would have had a better shot just because she has way more to do. But
Yeah.
like both films would have still been box office bombs that like I think Sally Field would have won regardless.
Agreed.
Fritz said, could Sissy have gone supporting? I think so. I'm going to stick my neck out and say she's not really the lead of the movie for me.
She's not, but I don't even think she's an interesting supporting role. It's just such a nothing part.
Yeah.
Especially again in the 80s, you have some of the best supporting actress wins and iconic wins ever.
Yeah.
The whole movie, The River, just forget it. No.
Yeah. Wash it down. Throw it down the river. Fritz said Jessica Lange was cast in The River before deciding to make her own farm movie. Coincidence that the cow in The River is named Jessica? My goodness. Such a shady question, but I love it.
It is.
What do you think?
I
do think Jessica is an odd name for a cow. So
it's an extremely strange name for a cow. So maybe it was. I didn't even know that.
A subtle dig. Yeah.
A little dig.
Yeah.
Mean. Don't you be talking to Miss Jessica Lange that way. Don't be reducing her to a cow in a terrible movie. Come on.
Right.
Let's show some respect, people.
Yes, put some respect on her name. Chelsea said, which farm would you save first?
I liked the country. I like that farm the best.
Yeah.
Also because Texas these days.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a lot for Texas.
Yeah. I think the farm on the river is like a lost cause, quite frankly. I'm not even going to bother trying to save that farm.
Yeah.
I think they just need to move on with their lives. Agreed. So yeah, country, I would say so. Miles McHale has an interesting one. What 3 actresses of the modern era should be saving their farms at the Oscars? And then he suggests Frances McDormand, Holly Hunter, and Mary Louise Parker. Solid combination there.
I would definitely go with Frances McDormand. I would see Kate Winslet could save a farm.
Why not? Yeah.
Amy Adams.
That's a good one.
She's plucky. If she can talk to aliens, she could definitely do this.
There you have it.
And she could fight Mark Wahlberg's sisters in The Fighter. She could definitely
That's true. Yeah, that'd actually be a pretty solid role for her.
She would finally win.
Yeah.
My love.
I wish. Yeah. I hope her time is coming. She's in a weird spot in her career right now, so I don't know. But I would throw in someone like Ruth Negga, who did that sort of thing in Loving. I think she would be really good for that kind of thing.
Angela Bassett could 1,000% save a farm.
I could see it. Joey Gentili said, in the decade of Meryl, which farm lady do you think Meryl would have played the best? Probably country.
I had her as Jewel Ivy because I want to see Meryl Streep punch a punch a man in the face and beat him with a piece of wood.
Yeah.
That scene alone, I want to see Meryl Streep do.
I love it. Fritz said, cast one of the farmer's wives in a remake of Loretta Young's The Farmer's Daughter. And cast Loretta Young in a 40s version of one of the 3 farm movies. So for those who don't remember The Farmer's Daughter, it's Loretta Young as this young woman who comes from a farm, humble background, but she speaks her mind and she eventually is like working her way up to being this public official or in public office. So who do we think of Jessica Lange and Sissy Spacek and Sally Field would be best for that sort of thing?
Jessica Lange.
Makes sense.
Yeah. She's got that strength that I don't want to say the others lack, but
I think Sally Field could do it too. Probably not Sissy. Yeah.
No. Sissy's very sweet.
Yeah. Okay, so Rob Montoya said, fast forward to 2023. All 5 of these films are remade. Who would you cast in each of these roles? So I will say I would not want to subject today's actresses to this kind of material. So I'll just...
Hollywood, please do not do this. That's the first thing.
You don't need to remake any of these. Just saying. I spent a stupid amount of time trying to figure out a good combination for this. Here's what I've got for modern actresses who could play these roles. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Williams in Places in the Heart.
Oh.
Right? Could work.
Okay.
For A Passage to India, I went with Claire Foy.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe? Yeah. The Bostonians was tough. I settled on Tilda Swinton.
Oh.
And then for the other 2, like country, I was like, who even knows? I went with Jessica Chastain because I gave up at a certain point.
Yes.
And for the river, I was just like, I don't know, Shailene Woodley, who I don't know. Again, I don't want anyone to do these movies.
Yes,
so
don't. I would say this is going to take me longer. I didn't see this question, so I don't have this one prepared.
It's okay. You don't have to do all of them if you don't want to.
Modern, I could see Amy Adams in Places in the Heart. Speaking of her,
now that you said that, I think that's a good one.
Now I'm like, I could see Winslet in The River, even though it would be so unbelievably beneath her. I could see Cate Blanchett in The Bostonians.
Wow, I like that.
And I mean, like, make her a real Lydia Tarr. Like those kind of, that's the machinations I want. I mean, wouldn't that just be perfect?
Yeah, I like that.
We have to think younger too. I do like Michelle Williams in one of the Save the Days. Passage to India would be much harder to cast. But yeah, Claire Foy, absolutely. Or I want to be like the other one from The Crown.
Vanessa Kirby. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see Vanessa Kirby as well.
Not bad. Eddie Moradian said, who stole Kathleen Turner's nomination for Romancing the Stone? She won the Globe, LAFCA, and was runner-up at National Society of Film Critics. Also, what led to Field winning? She wasn't as dominant in the precursors. We kind of talked about that. Based on what people were predicting for nominations at the time, I did some digging into the newspaper archives here. All of the farmers' wives were safe for nominations.
Oh.
All 3 of them. So that was just like locked in 3. And then people were kind of off and on about Vanessa Redgrave and Judy Davis. I would guess Vanessa Redgrave was 5th from that lineup, but I'm not positive.
I would agree with you, but in my humble opinion, Spacek.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of quality, I think it's that's a different story.
Me. But yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think just because the Bostonians, nobody really saw it, I think was probably just got in.
True.
Joey Gentili said, a lot of questions from Joey, probably the least seen crop of Best Actress nominees from the 80s based solely on the availability of their films. With that said, Kathleen Turner won the Golden Globe for comedy, was in a super popular film, and missed the nomination. Why?
Beats me.
Because Romancing the Stone is great. I think
comedy,
it's just
genre.
Yeah. Action, romance. I feel like that kind of thing just isn't taken seriously. Plus, she also had another movie that year, Crimes of Passion, that people actually did think she might get in for. So splitting her own vote, something like that.
True. What an actress she was.
Yeah. Chels said, "Is this one of our least hot girl years?
Yeah.
Especially without our Globe winner Kathleen Turner." Yes, it really is. There's not a lot of like attitude dominating women in this group.
Not a lot of hot. Not a lot of
No.
hot.
Yeah. You hate to see it. Christopher Perkins said 1984 was the year Freddy Krueger was introduced to audiences. Which of these 5 characters would make the best final girl in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie?
Oh, I have that. I have the first girl and the final girl.
Okay.
Final girl is Jessica Lange. That piece of wood, that fighting a man with a piece of wood, she would totally go down last. First
Yep.
girl would be Judy Davis.
That is probably true. I also went with Jessica Lange as the final girl. I just want to see her face off against Freddy in general. Let's just see what
Yes.
happens.
Let's make that happen instead of remaking
Yeah.
movies. God, never. Don't.
Yes. Christoph said, "Is the fact that Mia Farrow can't even get in a year like this, even although Broadway Danny Rose gets nominations for Best Director and Best Original Screenplay, the clearest indication that the Academy just had a beef with her and would never nominate her for anything ever?"
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. It is. I will study till my last dying breath that she wasn't nominated in 1968.
Yeah.
How? Especially
Yeah.
compared to Sissy Spacek this year. What? It's really sad, especially since they so often reward other Woody Allen people.
Yeah. And also in Broadway Danny Rose, she is like stretching. She's playing like a very bold kind of character that she doesn't always play. So very strange.
She's
I
also
can't explain it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Eric Maxwell Brunn said, "What chance did Frances McDormand have here of getting nominated for Blood Simple? Would you have nominated her?" So I'll just clarify and say it wasn't actually eligible this year. It was actually the next year, but even then I doubt it was on the radar, even though I do think she's great in Blood Simple. I believe that's her first performance on film, so really good stuff. I don't know if you've seen Blood Simple, but
I have
she's
not,
great.
but knowing
Great early Frances.
Yeah, and it's a Coen Brothers film, so
Yeah,
I'm
it's their
sure
debut.
that movie is amazing, and I am sure that she is amazing in it, and
Yes.
probably worthy of an Oscar. I have not seen it though.
Okay, Joey Gentili with the cast question here. Recast these 80s Oscar talents and Karen Black in the roles above: Melanie Griffith, Jessica Tandy, Anne Ramsey, Kim Stanley. What a combination you picked out, Joey.
I had Anne Ramsey. I had as in Country.
Okay.
And who are the other women again? I'm sorry.
Karen Black, of course. Melanie Griffith, Jessica Tandy, and Kim Stanley.
I had Melanie Griffith in Places in the Heart. I had Kim Stanley in The Bostonians, Jessica Tandy in Places in the Heart, Melanie Griffith in The River, Anne Ramsey in Country, Kim Stanley in The Bostonians, and Karen Black in A Passage to India.
Wow.
I feel like Karen Black really could have done that shaky mentality thing, and Anne Ramsey has the strength to save.
Yeah. I could not find a place for Anne Ramsey in any of these. All due respect.
That one was really hard. With all due respect,
what I ended up with is I said Karen Black in Country because I think she overlaps a lot with Jessica Lange. Mm-hmm. Kim Stanley in The Bostonians for sure.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. Jessica Tandy in her younger years in A Passage to India, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. I haven't seen a lot of her early work, so I don't even know if she was capable of that sort of thing, but she is English, so that helps a little bit. Melanie Griffith in The River, and then somehow I ended up with Anne Ramsey in Places in the Heart by
she was
default.
Hard. We did have some overlaps. We definitely had some overlap.
Yeah. Okay.
That was tough.
So that was very tough, not gonna lie. We have another casting question. Jimmy said, "Judy Davis is the only non-winner in this group. Recast the other 4 roles with fellow 80s non-winners: Kathleen Turner, Sigourney Weaver, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Jane Alexander."
This one I have my paper ready for. Sorry, I had
Oh,
so
wow.
many lists on so many pieces of paper.
Yeah.
Okay. I have Jane Alexander on the Bostonians,
Mm.
Sigourney Weaver in The River, even though it would totally waste her talent.
Yep.
Kathleen Turner in Country, and Michelle Pfeiffer in Places in the Heart.
Yeah, we have a very similar combination. I would put Michelle Pfeiffer in Places in the Heart. I would put Sigourney Weaver in The River. And then I would put Jane Alexander in Country and Kathleen Turner older in The Bostonians.
Good pick. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see her being a very dominating, kind of like controlling figure
Absolutely.
in The Bostonians.
I don't know. Jane Alexander to me seems like a spinster. I don't know why.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, I could see that.
I see her as a repressed.
She also seems like a farm girl too. I don't know. Could
Great
be either one.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Christoph said, "Did you at any point in preparing this episode have to sigh and think, why couldn't Amadeus have a lead actress performance?"
Every time I sat down to watch one of these movies.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
And I could watch Amadeus. I watch it a lot. It's one of those when I scroll through and see it on a streaming, I'm like, I got a couple hours free.
Why not? Throw it on.
It always hits. Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Juan Carlos Ojano said, "This is one of the few years in the 80s when Meryl Streep didn't get nominated. This year, she starred in Falling in Love, opposite Robert De Niro. Any chance you've seen it? If yes, thoughts?"
No.
I have not seen it, unfortunately. But I'm sure it's interesting. Let's see. I think we have one more here. Matt Stillman said, "The Save the Farm year. Please swap out all 5 nominations with 5 unnominated performances to create an improved lineup."
I do not have this prepared, so I will
That's
defer
okay.
to you, sir.
Okay. Well, here's what I came up with. Kathleen Turner in Romancing the Stone, as previously stated.
Mm-hmm.
Mia Farrow in Broadway Danny Rose. Karen Allen in Starman, which I think is fantastic. Linda Hamilton in The Terminator.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I kind of ran out of room here, so I'm just like, I don't know, Goldie Hawn and Swing Shift. Either way, I think we would have more fun with that group.
Far more interesting films and much more characters.
Especially Linda Hamilton. I think she's incredible in that first film too. She's great. So
yes.
All right. So let's get to our final segment where we will reveal who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. Amy, what was it? I'm very curious because I could expect anything to come out of your mouth and be like, "Yep, sounds right."
My heart isn't in it, but I'm guessing maybe Sissy Spacek because she was also nominated for a Golden Globe.
Well, so was Jessica Lange.
True.
So
but
there's that.
Yeah, no, I'll switch that. You're right. Jessica Lange.
Okay.
Because I think she had a lot more to do. And it's a very fine performance. Do I think it was close? No. Mm-hmm. But sure, Jessica Lange. And I feel awful. Yeah.
I'm curious because some people have said it might be Judy Davis. I'm not saying that's what I'm going to say, but some have said it. Is there a reason you don't think it would be Judy? Because the film was very embraced, as you know. Those nominations.
I just feel that, again, the pro-USA super patriotic sentiment, and that these are all very, not just American iconic performances, because by this point, they had won. So people knew these women. They're much more relatable.
Yeah.
And much more likable characters on screen than Judy Davis is. And Judy Davis in the United States at that time, no one really knew who she was. So I don't think she would be in the runner-up. Mm-hmm. But I'm going with Lange because she had the most to do. And I don't think anyone was wanting Vanessa Redgrave back up on stage again.
Right. I am going to go out on that limb with you, actually. I think it is very tempting to go with Judy Davis because her film was so embraced, but there's something in my gut that says it was Jessica Lange. I think she was beloved at that time. She is in command of her film for the most part, more than anyone else here.
Yeah.
I think, possibly. I haven't checked the screen time, but I think she is the most lead of any of these. And she just strikes me as someone who they would want to give an Oscar in lead following a supporting win, like they
Yeah.
did with Meryl a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
I find Sissy Spacek very unlikely based on just the material. I think Vanessa Redgrave was lucky to even be nominated based on how people felt about her. And I just have this feeling that, like, the sort of wishy-washy elements of A Passage to India when it comes to Judy Davis's character
Mm-hmm.
made it, for me, not as likely that she would be contending for the win. Plus,
Mm-hmm.
her being kind of written about as like a surprise nominee who came in at the last minute, plus it being a borderline lead supporting performance. I'm sure people will disagree with me, and that's fine. I know that Lange is also like the sole nomination for her movie, and it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of tough to win with that, but I assume it's easier to be a runner-up with that, so that's what I'm
True.
gonna go with.
True.
Like, if they reveal the vote totals tomorrow and it said it was Sissy Spacek for The River, I would be like, that's interesting, but like, it wouldn't surprise me.
Wouldn't be
To me,
shocked.
they're all kind of like tied for last.
Speaking of the "you like me, you really like me," I admit that you like me. If
Yeah.
Vanessa Redgrave had ever won again, I could see her saying that, like, "Wow,
You like me.
hey."
Yeah.
We're like, "So you don't hate me? Cool.
Right.
Thanks."
Yes. Well, final question for you. Who from this lineup would you have voted for?
I would have voted for Judy Davis. There's
Okay.
something about that performance that really I find haunting and fascinating. My runner-up would be Jessica Lange, but yeah, Judy.
Okay.
There's something about the
Yeah.
I just love, and I think it's sad that such a talented actress hasn't really gotten the recognition I think she deserves.
That's a very good point. This may come out of left field for you and for people listening, because it truly came out of left field when I was thinking about who I would vote for here. It really is kind of by default that I'm doing this. My winner would be Vanessa Redgrave.
Interesting.
I don't know how I landed there. I just feel like, looking at the other performances, it's a lot of what I'm expecting from those performers. I think Sally Field is doing good, solid work that just, for me, doesn't quite rise to the level of Oscar worthy for me. Judy Davis is solid, but just is so coming in and out for me that I just don't want to reward it a lead win. I know that we maybe disagree on that, but I kind of landed with Vanessa Redgrave just because she has so much to do in terms of complexity internally and is so clearly the MVP of her film, as I said, that this is kind of where I landed. I don't think she would even make my lineup if I were to do my own personal ballot like I already did, and I think I would reward like Kathleen Turner or Karen Allen maybe.
Oh yeah.
But for what we got here, I'm just throwing a fun little vote on Vanessa Redgrave.
Neither one of us choosing a Save the Farm woman. Look at us.
I know, right?
We're mavericks. We go with our gut.
Yes, exactly. Screw the farm.
Yes.
The other ladies are doing more interesting work.
They really
are.
are.
Yeah, but I would have been happy with the Judy Davis win too, for the record. So
yeah,
just a very, very strange year. But thank you so much, Amy, for helping me break this down. This is, again, like, not the most ideal Best Actress combination, but I think we had a lot of fun with it.
I always do, and it's always an honor. And keep up the good work, sir.
Thank you, as you too. Tell people where they can find more of you and your work on the internet.
At Thomasson11 on Twitter, and I write and podcast for the Women of InSession Films, and I write at InSession Films. And I'm currently working on an article about movie characters who you're supposed to like, but are actually terrible.
Fun. Okay.
The snark.
We love the Amy Thomasson snark. All right. And thank you all so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Jacobson, and the podcast is at Oscar Runner Up. Instagram at And the Runner Up is. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you heard, go to patreon.com/And the Runner Up is, where you can hear a whole bunch of bonus episodes, including over a dozen now with our friend Amy here on How Did They Win?
Yes.
So, next week, we'll be discussing the Best Actress lineup of 1985, where the nominees were Anne Bancroft in Agnes of God, Whoopi Goldberg in The Color Purple, Jessica Lange in Sweet Dreams, Geraldine Page in The Trip to Bountiful, and Meryl Streep in Out of Africa, with the winner being Geraldine Page. So with that, thanks again, Amy.
Always.
And I will bid you all adieu.